Welcome to another story on Cheating Tales Lab. We're so happy to have you here, and today's story is one we think you'll really enjoy. So without further ado, let's begin. Zephyr Blackwood's keys jangled as he fumbled with the lock. A bouquet of blue orchids cradled in one arm and a small velvet box tucked securely in his pocket. The house was unnaturally quiet as he stepped inside, the silence pressing against his ears like a physical force. "Lyra," he called out, his voice echoing through the empty rooms. No answer. Something was off. Zephyr's eyes darted around, taking in the subtle signs of disturbance. A photo frame lay face down on the side table, its usual place marred by its absence. As he moved further into the house, the wrongness intensified. In the kitchen, Lyra's favorite mug lay shattered on the floor, its pieces scattered like fallen stars. Her purse sat abandoned on the counter, its contents undisturbed. The orchids suddenly felt heavy in his hands, their delicate petals a mockery of the celebration he'd anticipated. Zephyr's heart raced as he made his way to the living room. Lyra's phone rested on the coffee table, its screen a web of cracks. He picked it up gingerly, as if it might bite him. The cracks spread outward from the center, like the tendrils of a sinister conspiracy reaching into his life. With trembling fingers, he pulled out his own phone and dialed Iris Zhao's number. Lyra's best friend picked up on the third ring, her voice pitched oddly high. "Hello? Zephyr? Iris, have you seen Lyra? She's not home, and things look strange." There was a pause, too long to be natural. "And no, I haven't seen her. Is everything okay?" Zephyr's suspicion grew with each stuttered word. Iris was hiding something, her usual poise crumbling under the weight of whatever secret she was keeping. "Are you sure? You haven't heard from her at all?" "I'm sorry, Zephyr. I really don't know where she is." The words tumbled out too quickly, each one another brick in the wall of deception. After hanging up, Zephyr found himself in their bedroom, drawn there by some instinct he couldn't name. His eyes fell on Lyra's jewelry box, an ornate wooden thing they bought on their honeymoon. Something niggled at the back of his mind. He opened it, fingers tracing the familiar contours. Then he paused. Was that a seam where there shouldn't be one? Pressing gently, he felt a click, and a false bottom sprang open. Inside lay a burner phone, its cheap plastic a stark contrast to Lyra's elegant jewelry. Zephyr's hand shook as he turned it on. The messages that filled the screen were in a code he didn't recognize, a fact that chilled him to the bone. He was a top cryptographer, for God's sake. If he couldn't crack it at a glance. The shrill ring of his phone cut through his thoughts like a knife. Detective Nolan Frost's gruff voice filled his ear before he could even say hello. "Mr. Blackwood, we found your wife barely alive in a motel. You need to come now." The words hit Zephyr like a physical blow. He stumbled, catching himself on the edge of the dresser. "What happened? Is she—" "Just get here," Frost interrupted, his tone grim. "There's more to this than meets the eye." As Zephyr rushed out the door, the velvet box fell from his pocket forgotten. The sapphire necklace inside glinted in the fading light, a testament to the love he thought he knew. The Starlight Motel loomed before Zephyr, its neon sign flickering weakly in the twilight. The air was thick with the acrid stench of burnt rubber and gasoline, a pungent cocktail that made his stomach churn. Police cars formed a barrier around the scene, their lights painting the world in alternating flashes of red and blue. An ambulance stood nearby, its back doors open like the maw of some patient beast. And there, wrapped around a lamppost like some grotesque modern art installation, was a mangled red Porsche. Detective Frost materialized out of the chaos, his weathered face a mask of grim determination. "Mr. Blackwood," he said, nodding in greeting. "Your wife was in an accident with Caspian Vex, her ex from college. He was driving under the influence." Zephyr's mind reeled. Caspian Vex? Lyra had never mentioned him. Frost's next words hit even harder. "But there's more to this than meets the eye, Mr. Blackwood." Before Zephyr could press for details, movement caught his eye. Paramedics were wheeling out a stretcher, and on it lay Lyra. Her face was pale, marred by ugly bruises that stood out like accusatory fingers pointing at some unseen culprit. Their eyes met across the chaos of the crime scene. Lyra reached out weakly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Honey, I'm so sorry. It was an accident." The words seemed to carry a weight beyond their simple meaning, laden with secrets and lies. Zephyr turned away, unable to bear the sight of her. His gaze fell on a briefcase among the scattered debris, its contents spilling out onto the asphalt. He caught glimpses of what looked like classified documents before a uniformed officer hurried to gather them up. As he made his way back to his car, a hushed conversation between two paramedics reached his ears. "Did you see those badges? High-level clearance, man." "Yeah, and those encrypted hard drives? What the hell were they doing here?" Zephyr's mind whirled, pieces of a larger puzzle beginning to take shape. What had Lyra gotten herself into? And more importantly, what had she dragged him into along with her? The sterile corridors of the National Cyber Defense Agency headquarters seemed colder than usual as Zephyr made his way to his office. The events of the past few hours had left him feeling like a stranger in his own life. With practiced ease, he bypassed the standard security protocols and accessed the agency's personnel files. His fingers flew over the keyboard, searching for a name he'd never thought he'd need to know. Caspian Vex. There it was. Hired 3 months ago as a cybersecurity consultant. Zephyr's eyes narrowed. It was a vague title, the kind used when someone needed access but didn't want to draw attention. Red flags unfurled in his mind, each one a warning he'd failed to heed. Burning the midnight oil? Zephyr nearly jumped out of his skin. Raven Coe stood in the doorway, her sharp eyes taking in his disheveled appearance and the classified files on his screen. "Raven, He hesitated, weighing his options. Then, making a decision, he gestured for her to come in. "I need your help, but this stays between us." In a secure room, away from prying eyes and ears, Zephyr laid out the situation. Raven listened, her brilliant mind already connecting dots he hadn't even seen. "We need to look at the access logs," she said, her fingers dancing across a keyboard. "If what you're saying is true, there should be a pattern." Hours passed in a blur of code and caffeine. As the first rays of dawn crept through the windows, they had their answer. A series of minor but strategic security breaches over the past 6 months, all traced back to Zephyr's credentials. But the timestamps. "I wasn't even in the building for some of these," Zephyr muttered. Raven's voice was grim. "Someone's been using your access, and doing a damn good job of covering their tracks." They dug deeper, following digital breadcrumbs through the labyrinth of the agency's systems. And then they found it. Fragmented connections between Caspian Vex and chatter about a group known as the Cypher Syndicate on the dark web. "I've heard whispers about them," Raven said, her face illuminated by the glow of the screen. "They're planning something big, a cyber attack that could cripple entire nations." The implications hit Zephyr like a physical blow. Lyra had been using their marriage as a cover, feeding classified information to the Cypher Syndicate through Caspian. But why? What could possibly drive her to betray not just him, but their entire nation? With trembling hands, he pulled out the burner phone he'd found in Lyra's jewelry box. The encrypted messages that had baffled him earlier now seemed to mock him with their secrets. "Can you break this?" he asked Raven, handing her the phone. Her eyes lit up with the challenge. "Give me an hour." 53 minutes later, Raven's triumphant cry broke the tense silence. "I'm in." Zephyr leaned over her shoulder, his heart pounding. As the decrypted messages filled the screen, he felt the last remnants of his world crumble around him. Lyra wasn't just having an affair or stealing information. She was a deep-cover operative for the Cypher Syndicate, planted years ago to infiltrate the agency through him. Their entire relationship, their marriage, their life together, it had all been a lie. As the weight of the betrayal crashed over him, Zephyr gripped the edge of the desk, his knuckles turning white. He'd thought he was living a love story. Instead, he'd been an unwitting pawn in a game of international espionage. And now, it was time to change the rules. The antiseptic smell of the hospital corridor assaulted Zephyr's nostrils as he made his way to Lyra's room. A manila envelope containing divorce papers was tucked under his arm, its weight a constant reminder of the betrayal that had shattered his world. Room 307. Zephyr paused at the door, steeling himself for what lay ahead. He pushed it open, the hinges squeaking softly as if protesting the intrusion. The sterile whiteness of the hospital room was a stark contrast to the warmth their home once held. Lyra lay in the bed, looking small and vulnerable in her hospital gown. Her eyes widened as she saw him, a mix of emotions flashing across her face: relief, fear, and something else Zephyr couldn't quite place. "Zephyr," she began, her voice cracking. "I can explain." He cut her off with a raised hand, his face an impassive mask. Without a word, he placed a manila envelope on her bedside table. The soft thud it made seemed to echo in the silence of the room. Lyra's eyes darted to the envelope, then back to Zephyr. Understanding dawned on her face, followed quickly by panic. "Please, just let me." The door opened again, cutting off her plea. Caspian Vex sauntered in, his arm in a sling and a nasty gash running across his forehead. The smug grin on his face faltered slightly as he registered Zephyr's presence. "Well, well," Caspian drawled, recovering quickly. "If it isn't the man of the hour." Zephyr's jaw clenched, his hands balling into fists at his sides. The tension in the room was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. Caspian's next words hit like a sledgehammer. "I suppose introductions are in order. Zephyr Blackwood. Meet Lyra's handler in the Cipher Syndicate." "Oh, wait, that's me." Lyra's sharp intake of breath was the only sound in the room. Zephyr's mind raced, processing this new information. He'd suspected, of course, but hearing it confirmed so brazenly. "What do you want?" Zephyr managed to grit out, his voice low and dangerous. Caspian's smirk widened. "Straight to business. I like that." He lowered himself into a chair, wincing slightly as the movement jostled his injured arm. "We want your cooperation, Zephyr. Your expertise, your access. In return, we don't expose certain indiscretions from your past." Zephyr's blood ran cold. How could they possibly know about... "That's right," Caspian continued, clearly enjoying himself. "Lyra here discovered a rather interesting ethical breach from your early days at the agency. Wouldn't want that getting out, would we?" Zephyr's face remained impassive, but his mind was working overtime. He needed time, needed to think. I need some time to consider this," he said, allowing a hint of vulnerability to creep into his voice. Caspian nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Take all the time you need. We'll be in touch." As Zephyr turned to leave, his hand brushed against the get-well card in his pocket. In one smooth motion, he placed it on Lyra's bedside table, right next to the divorce papers. The high-tech listening device hidden within would pick up every word spoken in this room. With a final, inscrutable look at Lyra, Zephyr walked out, the first step of his counter-strategy set in motion. The game was on, and he intended to win. Artemis Steele's office was a fortress within a fortress. Zephyr had been here countless times before, but never like this. Never with the weight of betrayal and conspiracy hanging over his head. Director Steele herself was a formidable presence, her sharp eyes seeming to pierce right through him as he laid out everything he'd uncovered. The burner phone, the security breaches, the Cipher Syndicate, Lyra's true identity. He held nothing back. As he finished his report, Steele leaned back in her chair, her fingers steepled under her chin. The silence stretched on, broken only by the soft ticking of an antique clock on the wall. Finally, she spoke. "This goes deeper than we ever imagined." Her eyes narrowed as she absorbed the information. "We need to turn this to our advantage." Zephyr nodded, relieved that she believed him. "What do you suggest, Director?" A slow, predatory smile spread across Steele's face. "We make you a double agent, Mr. Blackwood. Feed false information to Lyra and Caspian. Use them to unravel the entire Cipher Syndicate operation from the inside out. The plan was daring, dangerous, and exactly what Zephyr had hoped for. "I'm in," he said without hesitation. Over the next few weeks, Zephyr lived a precarious double life. To Lyra and Caspian, he appeared to be a reluctant accomplice, sharing carefully selected tidbits of classified information. Each piece of data was meticulously crafted misinformation, designed to mislead the Cypher Syndicate while appearing valuable on the surface. Lyra, now out of the hospital, watched him with a mix of suspicion and hope. Zephyr played his part to perfection, allowing just enough reluctance and resentment to show through to make his cooperation believable. Caspian, for his part, seemed to revel in his perceived victory. His smug grins and condescending pats on the back made Zephyr's skin crawl, but he endured it all for the sake of the mission. One night, as Zephyr sat in his darkened living room, monitoring the feed from the listening device he'd planted in Lyra's hospital room, he overheard a conversation that chilled him to the bone. "Everything's going according to plan." Lyra's voice came through, tinny but clear. "Zephyr's cooperating, just like you said he would." "Good," a gruff male voice replied. Zephyr's breath caught in his throat as he recognized it. Detective Nolan Frost. "Keep him in line. We can't afford any slip-ups this close to the endgame." Zephyr's mind reeled. Detective Frost, the man in charge of investigating the motel incident, was on the Cypher Syndicate's payroll. The conspiracy ran deeper than he had ever imagined. As the days wore on, the toll of his deception began to show. Dark circles appeared under his eyes. His movements became jittery and unpredictable. Raven, ever observant, couldn't help but notice. "Zephyr," she said one day, cornering him in a secure room at the NCDA. "What's going on with you? And don't tell me it's nothing. I know you better than that." For a moment, Zephyr considered brushing her off, but the concern in her eyes, the genuine worry in her voice, broke through his defenses. In a moment of vulnerability, he found himself confiding in her about the emotional turmoil he was experiencing. "I feel like I'm losing myself," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Every lie, every piece of false information I feed them, it's like I'm chipping away at who I am." Raven listened silently, her presence a comforting anchor in the storm of his emotions. When he finished, she placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch grounding him. "You're not losing yourself," she said firmly. "You're fighting for what's right, even when it's hard. That's who you are, Zephyr. Don't ever forget that." Her words, simple yet powerful, gave Zephyr the strength to continue. As he navigated this treacherous path, Raven's support became his lifeline, a reminder of why he was fighting in the first place. The abandoned subway station loomed before Zephyr, its entrance a gaping maw in the side of a decrepit building. Graffiti covered every available surface, and the air was thick with the musty smell of decay and neglect. Zephyr adjusted his glasses, ensuring the hidden camera was in place. The live stream to the secure NCDA server was already running, capturing every detail of this clandestine meeting with the Cypher Syndicate leaders. As he descended into the bowels of the station, the dank atmosphere closed in around him. Flickering lights cast eerie shadows on the walls, and the sound of dripping water echoed ominously in the distance. The syndicate members were already gathered, their faces partially obscured by the poor lighting. Zephyr recognized Caspian and Lyra among them, along with a few others he'd seen in surveillance photos. As the meeting progressed, Zephyr's blood ran cold. The Syndicate's ultimate plan was far more ambitious and devastating than anyone had anticipated. They intended to crash the global financial market using stolen algorithms, creating worldwide economic chaos on an unprecedented scale. Zephyr kept his face impassive as he absorbed this information, but inside, his mind was racing. The implications were staggering. Millions of lives would be affected, entire nations brought to their knees. He knew then that the stakes of his mission had just been raised exponentially. In the days that followed, Lyra made several attempts to rekindle their relationship. Her touches, once a source of comfort and joy, now felt like poison on Zephyr's skin. Her words of love and regret rang hollow in his ears. I never meant to hurt you, she whispered one night, her hand on his arm. You have to believe me, Zephyr. Everything I've done, it was for a greater cause. Zephyr played along, forcing himself to respond with just the right mix of hesitation and lingering affection. All the while, he documented every interaction, building a case that would eventually bring the entire syndicate crashing down. Caspian, meanwhile, grew increasingly paranoid. Zephyr often caught him watching with narrowed eyes, as if trying to peer into his very thoughts. I want round-the-clock surveillance on Blackwood, Caspian barked at one of his underlings. If he so much as sneezes, I want to know about it. This new level of scrutiny complicated Zephyr's covert activities. Communication with Director Steele and Raven became a dangerous game of cat and mouse. He found himself employing ever more creative methods to pass along crucial information without detection. Late one night, as Zephyr was in the middle of transmitting a particularly sensitive piece of intel to Director Steele, disaster nearly struck. The door to his office began to open, the handle turning agonizingly slowly. Zephyr's heart pounded in his chest as he scrambled to hide the evidence of his true allegiance. Just as the door swung open, revealing one of Caspian's men, Raven's voice came through on the intercom. Zephyr, I need you in the lab right away. We've got a situation with the firewall. The syndicate member hesitated, then grudgingly allowed Zephyr to leave. As he hurried down the corridor, Zephyr sent a silent thank you to Raven for her perfectly timed intervention. Later, as he pored over some of the syndicate's encrypted communications, Zephyr made a chilling discovery. Hidden within the complex codes and ciphers was evidence suggesting that the Cipher Syndicate had infiltrated the highest levels of government. But it was the next revelation that truly shook him to his core. As he dug deeper, following a trail of digital breadcrumbs, he uncovered something that made his blood run cold. The evidence pointed to a mole within the upper echelons of the NCDA itself. Zephyr sat back in his chair, his mind reeling from the implications. The enemy wasn't just out there. It was here, within the very walls he'd sworn to protect. As he stared at the damning evidence on his screen, one thought echoed through his mind. Who could he trust now? The air in the NCDA's secure conference room crackled with tension. Zephyr Blackwood stood at the head of the table, his eyes hard as flint as he surveyed the small group of trusted operatives before him. Director Artemis Steele sat to his right, her face an impassive mask that betrayed nothing of the high-stakes game they were about to play. Ladies and gentlemen, Zephyr began, his voice low and steady, what I'm about to propose is not only dangerous but technically illegal. If anyone wants to leave now, there will be no repercussions. No one moved. Zephyr nodded, a grim smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Good. Let's begin. Over the next hour, Zephyr laid out the bones of an elaborate sting operation. The centerpiece? A fictitious quantum encryption server that would supposedly house the world's most sensitive financial data. We're going to create a honeypot so sweet the Cipher Syndicate won't be able to resist, Zephyr explained, his fingers dancing across a holographic display as he spoke. This server will be our bait, our trap, and our key to bringing down the entire operation. Director Steele leaned forward, her sharp eyes narrowing as she absorbed the details. And how do you propose we leak this information without arousing suspicion? Zephyr's smile was cold. Through me. I'll feed the information to Lyra and Caspian, bit by tantalizing bit. They think they have me under their thumb. It's time we use that to our advantage. As the meeting progressed, the plan took shape. Carefully controlled leaks, strategically placed vulnerabilities, all designed to draw the Cipher Syndicate into a trap of the NCDA's making. Over the next few weeks, Zephyr became a master of misdirection. Every conversation with Lyra, every clandestine meeting with Caspian, became an opportunity to drop hints about the quantum encryption server. I overheard something interesting today, Zephyr would say, his voice carefully modulated to sound both nervous and excited. A new server, supposed to be unhackable. It's got everyone at the agency on edge. He watched as the bait was taken, hook, line, and sinker. The Cipher Syndicate mobilized their most skilled hackers, pouring resources into cracking what they believed to be the ultimate prize. Zephyr stood in the shadows of the NCDA's main server room, watching as technicians scurried about, setting up the elaborate ruse. Fake servers hummed, their blinking lights a testament to the agency's attention to detail. Everything had to be perfect. The slightest inconsistency could blow the entire operation. As he observed the controlled chaos, a familiar voice cut through the noise. Zephyr. He turned to see Lyra approaching, Caspian close behind. Their faces were masks of determination and barely concealed greed. "We need access to the server room," Lyra said, her voice low and urgent. "The quantum encryption server. You're going to get us in." Zephyr felt a chill run down his spine. This was it, the endgame. He nodded slowly, playing the part of the reluctant accomplice to perfection. "All right," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But after this, we're done. I want out." Caspian's laugh was cold and mirthless. "Oh, Zephyr, you're in this for the long haul now. There's no getting out." As Zephyr led them towards the heart of the trap, he couldn't shake a nagging feeling of unease. Something was off. The syndicate's movement seemed too precise, too well-informed. It was as if they knew exactly where to step to avoid the NCDA's carefully laid snares. A chilling realization struck him like a physical blow. There was a mole on his team. Someone privy to the details of the sting operation was feeding information to the syndicate. As he punched in the access code to the server room, Zephyr's mind raced. The trap was sprung, but who was really caught in its jaws? He had mere moments to identify the traitor and salvage the operation before everything fell apart. The heavy door swung open with a soft hiss, revealing the blinking lights and humming servers within. As Lyra and Caspian stepped eagerly into the room, Zephyr's hand hovered over the concealed panic button in his pocket. One press, and the entire building would go into lockdown. But before he could act, a voice from behind froze him in his tracks. "I wouldn't do that if I were you, Blackwood." Zephyr turned slowly, his blood running cold as he recognized the speaker. The pieces of the puzzle suddenly clicked into place, revealing a picture far more twisted than he could have imagined. The server room, once a sanctuary of order and control, had become a battleground. Zephyr's mind raced, processing the unfolding chaos with the cold precision of the master cryptographer he was. The syndicate's uncanny knowledge of their countermeasures suddenly made horrifying sense. Zephyr's eyes darted around the room, cataloging every face, every micro-expression. The mole was here, in this very room. But who? A bead of sweat trickled down his spine as he realized the magnitude of the situation. The entire operation was unraveling faster than he could patch the holes. He was going to have to improvise, relying on years of experience and the razor-sharp instincts honed through countless cyber battles. "Impressive setup, Zephyr." Caspian's voice dripped with smug satisfaction. "Almost had us fooled. Almost." Lyra stepped forward, her eyes cold and calculating. Gone was the vulnerability she'd shown in the hospital. This was the real Lyra, the deep-cover operative who had played him for years. "Did you really think we wouldn't see through your little charade?" she asked, her voice like silk over steel. Zephyr's retort died on his lips as a new figure entered the fray. Detective Nolan Frost sauntered into the server room, a predatory grin on his weathered face. "Surprised to see me, Blackwood?" Frost chuckled. "You should have dug a little deeper into that motel incident. Might have saved you some trouble." The trio converged on Zephyr, backing him against the humming servers. They thought they had won, their victory assured by treachery and deceit. But Zephyr Blackwood was far from beaten. "You're right," he said, his voice steady despite the hammering of his heart. "I should have dug deeper. Into all of you." With a swift motion, Zephyr pulled out a small device from his pocket. The syndicate members tensed, expecting a weapon. Instead, a holographic display flickered to life, filling the air with streams of data. "What you're seeing," Zephyr explained, his confidence growing with each word, "is every piece of intelligence I've gathered on the Cypher Syndicate over the past weeks. Every conversation, every transaction, every dirty little secret. Caspian's face drained of color. Lyra's eyes widened in disbelief. Frost's hand inched towards his concealed weapon. The real sting operation, Zephyr continued, was layers deep. This server room, it's a sophisticated containment system. The moment you stepped inside, you activated a dormant protocol. We're locked in, and every word you say is being recorded and transmitted to law enforcement agencies worldwide. The realization of their predicament dawned on the syndicate members' faces. They had walked right into a trap far more intricate than they could have imagined. Lyra, ever the quick thinker, made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. Her face softened, tears welling up in her eyes. "Zephyr, please," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "What we had, it wasn't all a lie. I grew to love you. Truly. We can still have a life together. Just give me a chance to explain." For a moment, just a fleeting instant, Zephyr's resolve wavered. The memory of happier times, of a love he thought was real, threatened to overwhelm him. But then he remembered the betrayal, the years of lies, the lives put at risk for the syndicate's twisted ambitions. His expression hardened. "No, Lyra," he said, his voice cold. "We can't." With a subtle hand motion, Zephyr activated the final phase of his countermove. Alarms blared throughout the building as armed NCDA agents began to swarm towards their location. Panic erupted in the server room. Caspian lunged for the door, only to find it sealed shut. Frost drew his weapon, his eyes darting wildly for an escape route. Lyra stood frozen, the full weight of her actions finally crashing down upon her. In the chaos, the three managed to slip past Zephyr, making a break for the emergency stairwell. They disappeared through the door, just as the first NCDA agents rounded the corner. Zephyr gave chase, his intimate knowledge of the building's layout guiding his pursuit. The hunt was on, and he was determined to see it through to the bitter end. Rain lashed against the windows of the NCDA headquarters as Zephyr tore through the labyrinthine corridors. His footsteps echoed off the sterile walls, mingling with the distant shouts of agents and the wail of alarms. He could hear them ahead, Lyra, Caspian, and Frost, their desperation palpable in the frantic pounding of their feet. But Zephyr had the home field advantage. He'd walked these halls countless times, knew every shortcut and hidden passage. As they approached a T-junction, Zephyr cut left, taking a maintenance corridor that would bring him out ahead of the fleeing trio. He burst through a door just as they rounded the corner, nearly colliding with Caspian. The look of shock on their faces was almost comical. Almost. "End of the line," Zephyr panted, blocking their path. Frost raised his weapon, but Lyra pushed his arm down. "No, there's still a way out." The roof. They turned and ran, leaving Zephyr to give chase once more. Up they went, flight after flight of stairs, the storm growing louder with each floor they climbed. Finally, they burst onto the roof. The rain came down in sheets, drenching them instantly. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the scene in stark, electric blue. Lyra spun to face Zephyr, her hair plastered to her face, her eyes wild. "Zephyr, please," she shouted over the howling wind. "You have to listen to me. I'm pregnant. It's yours." The words hit Zephyr like a physical blow. He faltered, his mind reeling. Could it be true? After everything, could there be an innocent life caught in the crossfire of their deception? Caspian seized a moment of distraction. "Enough of this shit," he snarled, pulling out a small remote. With the press of a button, the whir of rotors cut through the storm. A helicopter rose into view, hovering at the edge of the roof. Their escape route. "It's over, Zephyr," Frost called out, already moving towards a chopper. "You lost. Accept it." But Zephyr wasn't done. Not by a long shot. As Lyra and Caspian made for the helicopter, Zephyr reached into his pocket and activated a device of his own. To anyone watching, it would have looked like he was simply letting them go. They didn't know that every word spoken in that helicopter would be broadcast to law enforcement agencies worldwide. Their escape vehicle had become a flying confession booth. Zephyr stood in the rain, watching as the helicopter lifted off into the stormy night. Water streamed down his face, indistinguishable from the tears he refused to acknowledge. A hand on his shoulder startled him. He turned to see Director Steele, her usually immaculate suit soaked through, her eyes glinting with a fierce pride. "It's done," Zephyr said, his voice barely audible over the fading sound of rotors. "They thought they could use me, betray me, and walk away. But they underestimated what I'm capable of. This is the price of their deceit." Steele nodded, understanding the weight of his words. "Come on," she said gently. "Let's get you inside. There's still work to be done." As they turned to leave the roof, Zephyr cast one last look at the storm-tossed sky. The helicopter was gone, swallowed by the night. But he knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where the echoes of betrayal would resound through the digital realm, changing the landscape of cybersecurity forever. With a deep breath, Zephyr squared his shoulders and followed Steele back into the building. The storm raged on, but within him, a calm had settled. He had faced his betrayers, confronted his past, and emerged stronger. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he was ready to face them. The war against the Cypher Syndicate was far from over, but tonight, Zephyr Blackwood had struck a decisive blow, and he would not rest until the last echoes of their betrayal had been silenced. The federal courthouse loomed before Zephyr Blackwood, its imposing facade a stark reminder of the gravity of the proceedings about to unfold within. 2 months had passed since that rain-soaked confrontation on the NCDA rooftop, but the weight of those events still pressed heavily upon his shoulders. As he ascended the steps, cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions. Zephyr kept his gaze forward, his face an impassive mask. He was the star witness in the trial against the Cypher Syndicate, and the world was watching. The courtroom fell silent as Zephyr took the stand. His eyes swept across the room, landing on Lyra and Caspian. They sat among the other arrested syndicate members, their prison jumpsuits a far cry from the polished personas they once projected. Lyra's gaze met his, a mixture of defiance and something else, regret perhaps? Caspian, on the other hand, glared with undisguised hatred. Over the next several days, Zephyr's testimony unfolded like a complex algorithm. He presented decrypted communications, detailed financial trails, and played the damning confessions recorded from the rig helicopter. Each piece of evidence was another nail in the syndicate's coffin, exposing the full extent of their operations. The media dubbed it the trial of the century. Zephyr's dual role as victim and hero captivated the public imagination. Despite the intense pressure and scrutiny, he remained composed, his testimony clear and unwavering. During a recess, Zephyr found himself alone in a private chamber, his mind still racing from the morning's cross-examination. The door opened, and Lyra was escorted in by a guard. Her eyes, once so familiar, now seemed to belong to a stranger. "Zephyr," she began, her voice soft, "I know you probably won't believe me, but I need you to know. What I told you on the roof about being pregnant, it wasn't entirely a lie. I thought I was at the time." Zephyr's face remained impassive. "I know the truth, Lyra. I saw your medical records from the hospital after the crash. You were never pregnant." The color drained from Lyra's face as she realized her final deception had been unraveled before it even began. Without another word, she was led away, leaving Zephyr alone with the echoes of her lies. When the verdict finally came down, it fell like a hammer blow. Caspian, identified as a key syndicate operative, was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. Lyra, despite her attempts to paint herself as a reluctant participant, received 25 years. The syndicate's leader, a shadowy figure finally unmasked, was given a life sentence. In the aftermath of the trial, as the dust began to settle, Zephyr found himself at a crossroads. An offer had been extended, the chance to lead a new international cybersecurity task force. It was an opportunity to be at the forefront of preventing future cyber threats, to turn his painful experience into a force for good. As he pondered the decision, Zephyr found himself standing before the NCDA's memorial wall. A new name had been added since he last visited Raven Coe, his friend and colleague. Fatally wounded while protecting him during the final confrontation with the syndicate, he placed a hand on her name, his touch gentle, almost reverent. "I'll make it count, Raven," he whispered. "I promise." Weeks later, Zephyr stood before the newly formed International Cyber Defense Coalition in Geneva. As he prepared to address the assembly and accept his new role, he reflected on the journey that had brought him to this moment. The betrayal had nearly broken him, but it had also forged him into someone stronger, someone capable of protecting others from experiencing the same pain. Zephyr stepped up to the podium, his gaze sweeping across the gathered dignitaries and cybersecurity experts. When he spoke, his voice was steady, filled with conviction. "Ladies and gentlemen, the digital realm is our new front line. And on this front line, trust is both our greatest vulnerability and our strongest asset. Today, we start building a safer digital future, a future where betrayal cannot hide in the shadows of cyberspace." As his words resonated through the chamber, Zephyr felt a sense of purpose settle over him. He had transformed his personal tragedy into a powerful drive for global cybersecurity. The echoes of betrayal that had once threatened to destroy him had become the foundation of a new era of digital defense. In that moment, as he looked out over the faces of those who would join him in this fight, Zephyr Blackwood knew that this was just the beginning. The battle for the future of cyberspace lay ahead, and he was ready to lead the charge. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.
Cheating wife follows friend's deceptive advice to pursue an affair, leading to divorce and betrayal. Two attractive women were dining on the restaurant's terrace, catching the eyes of passing men, but they were engrossed in conversation and paid them no mind. "How long has it been?" Melanie inquired of her tall, dark-haired companion. "Feels like ages since I last saw you." The other woman, a blonde a couple of years younger, replied, "I know, Mel. I've been swamped with grad school and family stuff. Hardly had time for anything else." "How's business school treating you? You must be close to snagging that MBA." "Yeah, almost there. Spring breaks next week, then just a few more weeks till graduation. Thesis is turned in, so no worries there. Plus, looks like I'm skipping all exams. Smooth sailing ahead then." "Fantastic, Mel. Thanks. Got a job lined up yet?" "Nah, thinking of taking a breather after the craziness of the last 2 years. Want to unwind a bit before diving into the workforce. But enough about me. How about you? Any special man in your life?" "Doing okay? Still on the hunt for Mr. Right?" The blonde gave her brunette friend an assessing look. "With your looks, you could have a date every night if you wanted." Melanie smirked. "Trust me, living the single life isn't all it's cracked up to be nowadays. Wading through a sea of idiots just to find one decent guy gets old fast." "I envy you, though. Happily married to a great guy like Adam." "Speaking of whom, how's your dashing husband doing?" "He's all right, I suppose." "Wait, did I just hear a hint of discontent?" "What's up, Mel? Things not all rosy in your world?" The blonde shook her head. "Not exactly trouble, just Adam's been swamped with work lately. Hardly any time for us. And when we do, our entertainment budget's tighter than ever while he dedicates all his time to building his company." "For both of you? And grad school? Well, it's probably not cheap. I get it, and I'm grateful, but sometimes I just miss the carefree fun of school. Everyone talks about parties and bar meetups, and here I am stuck at home watching TV reruns." Her dark-haired friend gave her a knowing look. Any specific person at school you're itching to party with?" Melanie chuckled. "You always see right through me." Leaning in to avoid being overheard, she confessed, "Actually, there's this freshman, Carl. He's really sweet," she blushed, "and he's definitely into me. Whenever we're together, he always compliments how good I look and how well I'm doing in school." Gary shook her head. "I don't think Adam would be thrilled about this. It's just innocent flirting, nothing serious. But you're right, Adam wouldn't approve. That's why I won't tell him." She shifted uncomfortably. "But I can't help but miss the freedom of my single days. It was so exciting meeting different guys, I miss it. Be careful, okay? You got a great husband. Don't risk losing him. Adam won't take kindly to any fooling around, and if he ever found out, plenty of women would be lining up to console him. I know. I want to spend my life with him, start a family. I just wanted a bit of fun before things got too serious. Lowering her voice, she leaned closer again. Speaking of Carl, he asked me to go to Florida with him for spring break. If I could guarantee Adam wouldn't find out, I'd consider it. She laughed it off. But it's just a fantasy. It could never happen. Gary sat down, contemplating Melanie for a moment. Finally, she nodded as if she had a plan. Don't be so sure. I've got an idea how you could pull it off. Melanie sighed, a mix of disbelief and excitement. Are you serious? You'd risk your marriage for a fling? If I could be certain Adam wouldn't know, maybe. But you're just teasing me, Gary. There's no way I could get away with it. Yes, and it's actually pretty straightforward. Gary began to outline each step with her fingers. First, you make a new Gmail account under a fake name like Good Friend. Then you use it to send Adam an anonymous message warning him about his wife's supposed affair. Wait, do I admit to having an affair? This sounds insane. Why would you do that? Gary kept her tone even. More like you'd suggest Melanie's cheating with someone Adam doesn't know and can't easily check. And what's the point? It'll just make Adam suspicious of me. Exactly. But when he can't find the mystery guy, he'll have to confront you, demanding answers. But I don't want him to doubt me. No, you don't. So when he confronts you, you act furious, accusing him of mistrust. You'll be so upset that you'll want to break from the marriage. Doesn't your mom live in Florida? Melanie was caught off guard by the sudden turn. Yes, why? Oh, I see. You tell Adam angrily that you're going to Florida to sort things out with your mom. Then, while he's here frantically searching for the phantom lover, you're in Florida with Carl having your own little fling. How do I explain this to my mom? Gary rolled her eyes. You don't. In fact, you don't even see her while you're there. But what if Adam calls her? Tell him not to. Make it clear you need space to sort things out. Warn him not to contact you or your mom while you're away. Tell him if he does, you might not come back. Melanie pondered her friend's plan for a moment, then her face lit up. You know, Gary, I can see this working. But what about when I come back? It's easy. By then, Adam will miss you like crazy, and since he can't find the mystery man, he'll realize it's all a hoax. He'll feel guilty and beg for forgiveness. You'll forgive him, and things will be back to normal. You'll have some fun, and you and Adam will be closer than ever. What about the guy I'm supposed to be seeing? Maybe I should just make up a name for him. You could, but it'll be more believable if he's real. Pick someone totally off limits, like an old guy or someone far away or even deceased. That way, if Adam tries to find him, you're in the clear. Hey, I think I've got it. There was this creepy professor back in my first year of grad school. He must have vanished because I never saw him again. How does that sound? Perfect. Melanie reached across the table, squeezing her friend's hand. You're amazing, Gary. I'm so pumped. I really think this is going to work. She hugged herself, trembling with anticipation. I can't wait to tell Carl. Adam returned to his office, sinking into his worn swivel chair. He rubbed his forehead, anxiety clouding his thoughts. If those parts don't arrive soon, we'll miss the prototype deadline. After the foreman left, Adam pondered a backup plan. His email chimed and he eagerly checked his inbox, hoping for good news. But the subject line regarding your wife nearly made him delete the message. Curiosity won, and he opened it. I'm sorry to say, but Melanie's involved with Professor Bellingham. Thought you should know, friend. What in the world? Stunned, Adam read the message again, struggling to believe it. This can't be right. Melanie wouldn't do this. Someone's trying to stir up trouble. But who and why? He almost deleted it, but paused. I can't ignore this. It's probably a mistake, but I have to know. Angrily, he hit reply. Who are you? Why make such an accusation? What evidence do you have? He fired off the message, staring at the screen in frustration. This won't get me anywhere. No way to trace this person or when they'll reply. I need to find out about this Bellingham. He scoured the university's site, but found no mention of the professor. Frustrated, he widened his search to other schools nearby, but came up empty-handed. This is maddening, he muttered, feeling powerless. Did my buddy just invent a name? He Googled it, but the results included 2 females, none local. I knew it was fake. Someone's pulling a prank or trying to drive me nuts. Yet he couldn't bring himself to delete the letter. Now that it was sent, doubt gnawed at him. What if she's cheating? I didn't see any signs, but that doesn't mean much. I've been swamped at work, barely spending time with her. Maybe she's upset because I've been neglecting her. I remember turning down her fun ideas sometimes, but dang, I'm putting in nearly hours a week for the business. Doesn't she get it? Can't she see it's for us? And we can't afford extravagance, her tuition's skyrocketing, and I'm pouring money into the business. Yet maybe I neglected her. Feeling guilty, he checked his calendar. finding no recent meetups. Damn. But guilt turned to anger. I may not have given Melanie all she wanted, but that doesn't justify cheating. We discussed sacrifices for the business. She agreed then, so she can't complain now. His thoughts were interrupted by the foreman's arrival. Hey Adam, great news. The parts we needed just arrived. Thank goodness. All right, we need to unpack them and get them to the workshop as soon as possible. After the foreman left, Adam took a deep breath. Well, at least one crisis is avoided, he smirked. Guess I can devote more time to my wife. After more futile internet searching, he leaned back, contemplating. If Mel's really having an affair, it must be someone from the university. Maybe my buddy got the name wrong, or perhaps the university didn't list him. He found the HR phone number. When the secretary answered, he inquired about Professor Bellingham. Which department? I think it's the business school, but not sure. After a pause, she apologized. No Bellingham in the business school. Other departments? Another sigh. Please hold. This time the wait was longer. When she returned, her tone was curt. No Professor Bellingham here. A thought struck him. Maybe he left a year or two ago. I can only confirm current staff. University policy, sir. Anything else? No, you tried, he said, holding back sarcasm. He tried the business school dean but got nowhere. By now his head throbbed. Need a drink, he muttered, hanging up. Then he called Gary. Hey, can we meet at Macy's after work? I need advice. No, can't talk about it now. Okay, see you at 6. At Macy's, Adam found Gary at a quiet table with wine and beer. He kissed her on the cheek. Thanks for the beer, and more importantly, for coming. As they sat, Gary studied him. All right, Adam, spill. Business trouble? Unsure where to start, Adam hesitated. Do you know a Professor Bellingham? Gary shook her head. Bellingham. Never heard of him. He sighed and handed her a printout of the email. I got this today, he said. She swiftly perused it, sighed, then read it again. Poor Adam, she said sympathetically. No wonder you didn't want to discuss it over the phone. What are your thoughts? I'm torn, Jerry, he replied. Can't fathom it's true, but can't ignore it either. I spent the day trying to find this elusive Bellingham at the university, but hit a dead end. Now I'm lost. Can't afford a detective, no time for sleuthing. That's why I turned to you. You've been a steadfast friend to Melanie and me. What's your take? She took another sip of wine, then gave his hand a quick squeeze. Essentially, you're asking if I think she's having an affair. I can't provide absolute certainty. On one hand, I haven't noticed anything to suggest she's unfaithful. On the other hand, I haven't seen much of her lately. His annoyance flashed, and she hastened to continue. You're aware that some people thrive on stirring trouble. Or perhaps you have business rivals who seek to distract. There may be other possibilities I haven't considered. What's clear is you can't ignore it and hope it vanishes. I know how strongly you value marital fidelity, and any suggestion of a rift in your marriage will gnaw at you. If left unaddressed, doubt will corrode your relationship with Melanie as effectively as infidelity, she said. I understand your dilemma, Gary, but what's the solution? I believe you should show this to her. She deserves to know she's been accused of infidelity and should have the chance to explain. After all, Adam, if someone accused you, wouldn't you want to know? He sat silently, then nodded. You're right. Keeping this from Melanie will affect our relationship. Ultimately, it could drive us apart as surely as if she had truly betrayed me, he said. He rose and embraced her. Thanks for helping me sort through this, Gary. I don't know what I'd do without you. You both mean the world to me, Adam, and if there's anything I can do, just say the word. He nodded gratefully and headed for the door as she watched him go. When he arrived home, Melanie was already there, waiting for him. Where have you been, Adam? I tried to call you, but you didn't answer, she questioned. Ignoring her query, he grabbed her hand and guided her to the couch. Sitting next to her, I need to show you something, Mel, something that's really confused me, he explained. As she sat down next to him, she appeared anxious while he handed her the printout. I received this email today. Can you make sense of it? She quickly read it. Then to his shock, she stood up and began shouting, Do you think I'm cheating on you? I can't believe this. You hear one accusation from someone anonymous, and suddenly I'm accused of cheating? No, darling, I'm not blaming you for anything. If you're not blaming me, then why did you show me this nonsense? She grabbed the printout, crumpled it, and threw it at him. You might as well stab me in the heart. This deeply wounds me. You trust someone too scared to even sign their name over me, your wife, she declared, grabbing her bag and heading toward the door. I can't even face you right now. I'm leaving, and I don't know when I'll return. With that, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Oh damn, I didn't see this coming. Now things are even worse, he moaned. sinking back into the couch and burying his face in his hands. As he sat there, Adam's initial thoughts were defensive. Why was she so upset? She didn't even let me explain. I didn't accuse her of cheating, I just showed her what someone else claimed, that's all. But he realized the truth before he finished. If Mel had shown me that note, I probably would have lost it too. But what could I do? Pretend everything was okay? Jerry was right. I can't just dismiss the letter. It wouldn't be fair to Mel or to me. Even though he spent the rest of the night pondering the issue, he was no closer to deciding what to do than when he began. He knew he and Mel needed to talk, but he couldn't even decide what to say to her. All he knew for certain was that he wanted to bring his wife home, to try to repair the relationship. Emotionally drained, Adam was determined to stay awake until Melanie returned. However, after another hour of waiting, exhaustion overtook him, and he drifted off to sleep on the sofa. Sometime past midnight, the sound of the door opening jolted him awake. As he stood up, Melanie entered the living room and fixed him with a stern look, hands on her hips. "Mel, we really need," she cut him off sharply. "I don't want to talk about this now," she said, her tone final. "You can spend the night on the couch, and we'll discuss it in the morning." Without waiting for a response, she turned and marched down the hallway to their bedroom. Hearing the door slam shut, he groaned and settled back on the couch, hoping sleep would claim him again. It took a while. Adam usually rose early for work, but he felt compelled to wait until Melanie appeared so they could talk. Brewing coffee, he sat at his laptop skimming the news. Nearly 8, Melanie entered the kitchen, dragging a suitcase behind her, shocking Adam. "Where are you going, Melanie? I thought we were." She raised her hand, cutting him off. "It's a shock, Adam. This shakes our whole marriage. I need time alone to process. Spring break starts tomorrow, and I'm going to Florida to visit my mom. I'll be gone all week, returning next Monday for classes. During my absence, I don't want to hear from you. No calls to me or my mom." "Got it." He nodded, feeling helpless. "I'm serious, Adam. If you try to reach out, I might not come back." "Understood." Another nod. "Okay," she said and left, dragging her suitcase to her car. Stunned, Adam sat for minutes before dragging himself to shave and change, then drove to work with a heavy heart. Upon arriving, good news awaited him. His foreman efficiently distributed the missing components, and testing proceeded without issue. "At least the business won't crash today," Adam muttered bitterly to himself. "Unlike my marriage." In the afternoon, while working on a spreadsheet, he received a call from Gary. "I was worried and wanted to know how you were doing. How did it go last night with Melanie?" "Oh well, it's a long, sad story," he said, feeling dejected. "Oh, that doesn't sound very good. Maybe we can get together to discuss this again over a drink." "That would be great, Gary." "Same place?" "Okay." Before leaving, he checked his email again, but there was still nothing from good friend. At the bar, Gary saw the dark circles under Adam's eyes right away. "Adam, looks like you didn't sleep much last night." "What happened?" Taking a big sip from his beer, Adam talked about the fight with Melanie and her leaving the next day. Gary looked at him with sadness and guilt. "Oh, Adam, I feel awful. You listened to me and it turned out all wrong." "No, Gary. I thought about it a lot, and I believe it was the only choice. I didn't expect Mel to react so strongly, but I couldn't hide the letter and act like nothing happened. Now I hope she'll calm down and we can talk when she's back." "You say that nicely, Adam, but I still feel bad. So what's your plan for the week?" "I'm not sure, Gary. If Mel and I don't talk, I don't see how we can move forward. Maybe I'll wait a bit and then call her." "No, Adam, that's the last thing you should do. She already feels like you don't trust her. If you call after she told you not to, it'll prove her right." "Yeah, I get it, but I feel so useless. I don't know how to find out who sent the letter while she's away. I'll keep trying to find this Professor Bellingham." "That sounds smart. Maybe he can help fill in some gaps." Over the next days, Adam kept trying to solve the letter mystery. Despite no luck, he was sure Bellingham had ties to the university. Then he had an idea. "Maybe I can't find him because he's an alum, not a teacher. I'm an alum too, so maybe the alumni office can help." When Adam called and said he was a former student, he got transferred to the development department quickly. The person he talked to wrote down Adam's info and asked if he wanted to give money to the school. Adam said no. He was looking for Professor Bellingham, thinking he might be a former student. The person checked but couldn't find anyone by that name in their records. Adam suggested maybe Bellingham didn't finish school, but the person couldn't help since their records only had graduates. Adam hung up frustrated, thinking he just guaranteed he'd be asked for money later. The next day, Adam went to the business school during spring break to look for Bellingham. Even though it was break, he asked around but eventually got asked to leave by the assistant dean. Back at his office, feeling defeated, Adam wondered what to do next. Then his phone rang. It was Dr. Avery Mayfair from the business school faculty, who heard him earlier and wanted to help. Mayfair said Bellingham used to teach part-time there, but his class got canceled because not many students enrolled. Adam thanked him. "There's more," Dr. Mayfair continued. "At the start of this year, Bellingham told me he got a job at Black Hills State University in South Dakota." "Really?" Adam asked, surprised. "Yes," the professor confirmed. "And there's something else. In the same message, he said he recently married his partner, Harold." "Harold. So Bellingham." "Exactly," Dr. Mayfair said. "Thank you for calling, Dr. Mayfair," Adam said gratefully. "I still don't get why someone sent me that nasty letter, but now I know it was a lie." "Can I ask why you called me?" "I'm grateful, but we don't know each other," the professor asked. "I don't mind telling you," he continued, his tone changing. "Years ago, something similar happened to me. My wife left me for someone else, so I understand how you feel. Thankfully, this time it was just a false alarm, but if it were true, I'd have told you." "Thanks, sir. I really appreciate what you did." That night, Adam called Gary to share the news. "I still don't know who's trying to mess up my marriage, but I'm sure now Mel isn't with Professor Bellingham." "Can you trust Dr. Mayfair?" Gary asked. "Definitely. I checked him out after our call. He's on the business school faculty. He seems respected and older, maybe around 60. I also looked up Bellingham on the Black Hills website. He's there too." "That's good news, Adam. You must feel relieved." "Yeah, I do. But now I'm not sure what to tell Mel when she comes back." "It's simple, Adam. From what you said about your argument with her, she didn't give you a chance to explain. When she returns, tell her you never doubted her. Say you knew about Bellingham and found him as soon as you got the letter. But because she reacted strongly, you couldn't tell her. If you handle it right, she'll apologize to you." "I'm not sure, Jerry. Things weren't exactly like that," Adam said uncertainly. Gary heard a smile in his voice. "Come on, Adam. Is it really so bad to bend the truth a bit to get what you want?" Before leaving town on Sunday, Melanie called Gary. "Hey, I just wanted to check on Adam before I come home. I'm nervous about what I'll find." "You owe me big for helping you while you were wrapped up in your affair. With some luck and my help, you'll reconcile with Adam, and your marriage will be better," Gary assured her. Melanie told him about her week, ending with Adam finding Bellingham. "If you handle it right, Adam will apologize, you'll apologize, and everything will be normal again." There was silence. "What if I don't want things to go back to normal?" Gary was confused. "What do you mean?" "Just last week you had an epiphany. Carl, the guy you're with, makes you laugh, and he's great in bed. You haven't felt this happy in years. You want to keep seeing him until the semester ends. Come on, Gary, you have to help me figure out a way to make this work." "Hold on, Melanie. You're already taking a big risk by going off with this guy for a week. If you try to keep the affair going here in town, you're really pushing your luck, girl." "Maybe, but you've got to admit your little scheme worked like a charm. I bet you can come up with a plan for me to do it again." "Come on, Jerry, please. This guy's really something." "I was afraid something like this might happen." There was a prolonged silence. "Okay," Jerry said slowly. "I can come up with a plan to get what you want, but you need to understand you're putting your marriage to Adam at risk. He's a good guy, Melanie. He's dedicated, faithful, and a real family man. Men like him don't come around every day. Are you sure you want to gamble it all for a bit of excitement in the bedroom?" Melanie chuckled. "You get me going with, 'I can.' Come up with a plan." "Okay, but don't say I didn't warn you. Now here's what you need to do. Do you still have that email account you set up?" "Of course. You told me to keep it active." "Good, because you need to send another letter from your supposed good friend, but this time send it to yourself, to your regular email." "Okay, but what should the new letter say?" "It's the same as the last one, but this time you'll write that Adam is having an affair with me." "What?" "But that's not true, and Adam knows it. How does this help?" "It's simple. The first letter accused you of infidelity. Adam found out you couldn't have cheated with Professor Bellingham, but he might still have doubts about your fidelity." "Wait, Gary, didn't you say a letter about Bellingham would give me leeway with Carl?" "That's right, but after he gets the second letter, he won't have doubts. He already knows you weren't involved with Bellingham, and he's sure he's not having an affair with me. Clearly, the so-called good friend is a liar. So Adam won't doubt you anymore. This means you can get away with almost anything without raising Adam's suspicions." There was silence on the line. Melanie then exclaimed, "Jerry, you're a genius. I don't know how you came up with this, but you just gave me a pass I can use for the rest of the semester." "There are two more things you need to do, Melanie. First, make sure Adam tells me about the second letter." "Okay, but why?" "Because then I can reinforce that you're trustworthy and this mystery friend isn't." "Ah, got it. He respects your opinion, so he'll listen to your advice. What else?" After you send the message to yourself, remember to log out of your good friend email account. What if Adam stumbles upon it? Oh no, actually, you should probably sign out of both your email accounts when you're not using them. You don't want Adam to find love notes from Carl, right? I've warned Carl never to email me, but that's still smart advice. Better safe than sorry. Returning home from work that evening, Adam was alarmed to find Melanie in tears. "What's wrong, Mel? What happened?" he asked, rushing to her. "Oh, Adam, it's happening again," she said, tears in her eyes, handing him a copy of the letter. "Damn it," he swore after reading the accusatory message. "You know that's not true, right?" "Of course I know. You'd never cheat on me, just as I'd never cheat on you. And even if you did, I know it wouldn't be with Gary. She's such a good friend to both of us that she'd never do anything like that. Damn it, someone's still trying to stir up trouble for us, and I have no idea who or why. There must be a way to trace these things." She looked up at him hesitantly. "Are you going to tell Gary about this? Do you think I should?" "I believe you should. Whether you like it or not, she's now involved. It wouldn't be fair to her if you didn't inform her about this." The next morning, when Adam called, Gary answered cheerfully. "Well, how are the lovebirds today?" Adam's tone was serious. "We're okay, Jerry, but there's something new I need to discuss with you. Can we meet after work?" "I actually plan to work from home after lunch. Can you come over?" "Sure." "Great. I'll stop by between 6:30 and 7. When Adam arrived at her apartment in the evening, Jerry immediately noticed his solemn expression. "What's wrong, Adam? I've been worried since you called." He shook his head. "I'm really sorry, Gary, but it seems you're now involved in this situation with Melanie and me." Confused, she looked at him. He handed her a copy of the latest letter. After reading it, she looked at Adam in despair. "But this is absurd. We're not having an affair. I would never do that to Melanie. I hope she knows that." He nodded. "She does. In fact, she said the same thing to me." Gary shook her head, puzzled. "That's a relief to hear. But what do you think all this means?" "I think someone is determined to cause trouble between Melanie and me. First a warning about the professor, now this. The only explanation I can think of is that I have an enemy, perhaps a business rival, but I have no idea who it could be. Anyway, since you're now involved, Mel and I decided you should be informed." "I'm glad you did, Adam. You're always so considerate, but I'm not sure what we can do about it. Unless this mystery person does something obvious or slips up, involving the police might not help." "I agree, Jerry, but it's frustrating. I'm tired of all this confusion, and I just want whoever it is to leave us alone. How is Melanie taking this?" "She's very upset. She was in tears when I got home." "I'm not surprised, especially after the first ordeal. Look, Adam, I think Melanie is pretty fragile right now with all of this and nearing graduation. She's probably on edge. You need to take care of her as much as possible. Do you think we should block all emails from this account?" "That might be a mistake. If they send anything else, you'll want to know." "You're right, but how can I protect Mel?" "Well, if you receive another letter, I wouldn't tell her immediately, if at all. You could monitor her email on your laptop whenever possible. If another letter comes, you can forward it to yourself before she sees it. That way you won't have to involve her." "Yes, I think that's a good suggestion." He stood up. "I'm truly sorry you got pulled into all of this. But if this is meant to be an apology, then I don't need one. You mean a lot to me, and I'll do whatever I can to assist." He smiled appreciatively. "I should head home now to check on Melanie." Starting to leave, he paused, embraced Gary, and planted a kiss on her cheek. "Thank you for being such a great friend. Your support throughout all of this means a great deal to me." Upon returning home, Adam was pleasantly surprised to find Melanie in much higher spirits. The following morning, she seemed even more cheerful and rose early to have breakfast with her husband. "It's a rare treat to see you before I head off to work," Adam remarked. "Well, I wanted to make sure I said I love you before you left this morning," she explained, planting a kiss on him. "Oh, and by the way," she continued, "I wanted to mention that I'll be attending a lecture on campus this evening. A few girlfriends and I are planning to grab a bite afterwards, so I might be home late." "Sure thing, Mel. Everything's all right here. We've got plenty of leftovers in the fridge, so I can snack on those." "Thanks, honey. If we miss each other, I'll probably swing by after class to drop off my things and change clothes. Have a great evening." Aware that Melanie wouldn't be home, Adam decided to stay at the office later than usual. Business was looking up, with a potential large client expressing interest in their new product samples. Things are starting to make sense now. I just need to get to the bottom of who's behind these email games with Mel and me, he pondered. He couldn't stop thinking about the mysterious good friend. As he walked into the house, heading toward the bedroom, he saw Melanie's laptop on the table. She probably didn't need it for the lecture, he thought. Then he remembered Gary's suggestion. I wonder if she still checks her email. If she does, Then we need to see if she's received anything new from this idiot. He opened the laptop and saw that the email page wasn't open. Clicking on the Gmail link, a window popped up, asking him to choose an account. He saw Melanie's email, but she was logged out. So he started to close Gmail, but before he could, he noticed a second account named Good Friend. Shocked, he stared at it. Trying to open it, Google asked for a password. Without it, he closed the tab and slumped into his chair, trying to understand what he had found. Why does she have an email with that name? Gmail doesn't allow duplicate addresses, so Melanie must have sent those letters. But why? Why would she accuse herself of an affair? Then it hit him. It was a diversion. She wanted me to chase after some gay professor while she was with someone else. Another thought came to him. Her trip to Florida. When I confronted her, she acted mad, saying she needed space and was visiting her mother. But did she really? Quickly, he called his mother-in-law. After some small talk, he asked, "Melanie and I were thinking of visiting next month. Would that be too soon?" "Not at all. It's been ages since I saw you. Please come whenever," she said sweetly. Gritting his teeth, he replied, "Great, we'll be in touch." After hanging up, he cursed quietly. Melanie is so deceitful. Where did she go? And who was she with? Damn her. Then he recollected the last letter, the same one Melanie had received. What was the purpose of this? Damn it must be another distraction while she goes to lectures with her friends. What a despicable, lying woman. Curiosity gnawed at him, prompting him to investigate what she wore when she went out. He hurried to the bedroom and sifted through his wife's underwear. Despite struggling to remember every detail about Melanie, he almost gave up, but a sudden suspicion gripped him, leading him to double-check one particular item, a garter belt. It was missing. Frustrated, he searched for a suitable bra and underwear, only to find them gone as well. Out for dinner with her friends, huh? He replaced everything and returned to the kitchen table. So be it. You enjoy sabotage and deception? Well, two can play at this game. When Melanie got home after midnight, he was angry but pretended to sleep as she entered the bedroom. He held back from confronting her when he heard the shower, sarcastically thinking, who knew lectures would be so sweaty? The next morning, Adam got up very early and left for work before Melanie woke. He left a note by the coffee pot. Hope you enjoyed the lecture. I had an early meeting at work and might be late today, so don't wait up. Adam had a busy day, but not with work meetings. He did errands at lunch and came home with some purchases to get ready. Then he had 2 meetings in the afternoon. Later, he went out for dinner and a movie. Melanie was asleep when he got back to bed, trying not to disturb her. But when she woke up, Adam was waiting. I thought you left for work already, she said, taking the coffee he gave her. I wanted to see you before I leave. I have a flight to Detroit at noon. I'll be gone a few days. That's rare. When will you be back? Friday night, maybe Saturday morning if things go well. Can you manage while I'm gone? She smiled. I'll be fine. I'll keep busy. Good. Just stay away from our good friend while I'm gone. Her face fell. That's not funny, Adam. Sorry, you're right, it's not. He waved and left for the car. As he drove away, he frowned. She didn't even notice I didn't say I love you. She's probably making plans to meet her lover. I just need a diversion to keep her here. Instead of going to the airport, at lunchtime, Adam left his office and made his way to the off-campus parking lot of the university. He briskly walked toward the Graduate School of Business, dressed down in jeans and a sweatshirt, with a cheap backpack slung over his shoulder. Without attracting attention, he headed to the reading room of the business school library. The few students present paid him no mind as he casually strolled behind the periodicals rack. Once out of sight, he produced a string of hefty firecrackers, lit the extra-long fuse, and tossed them into a metal disposal container. He casually strolled to the nearest door, using his backpack to prop it open, then exited. Outside, he retrieved the phone. He'd bought the previous day and dialed campus security. Quick, come over, there's firing at the business school, he exclaimed when they answered. I think there might be multiple shooters. It's ongoing. Pointing the phone towards the library, he triggered a series of fireworks seconds later. After disconnecting, he hurried across campus to his car amid blaring sirens and frantic people scattering in all directions. From his neighborhood vantage point, he watched an hour later as his wife's car pulled into their driveway, followed by another vehicle with a male figure stepping out. In times of danger, there's no place like home, Adam muttered with a bittersweet grin before driving to the motel where he'd booked a room. Later that night, he circled his neighborhood to ensure the second car remained parked in his driveway, then returned to his room to attempt sleep. The next morning, when the adulterous pair exited the house, they were shocked to find Adam leaning against the stranger's car door. Oh God, Carl, that's my husband, Melanie gasped upon recognizing him. I thought you were in Detroit, she stammered, then caught herself. Dear, things aren't as they seem. Carl just stopped by for a visit. Melanie, every time you speak, it's just lies. I don't want to hear it anymore, he growled. This isn't a one-time slip-up. You've been seeing him for weeks and it wasn't accidental. You planned it all. I know you sent that letter as a distraction, so you could spend spring break together, wherever you went. And by the way, your mom's wondering why you haven't visited. I guess you were too preoccupied with this garbage, he gestured at the sullen man, to bother seeing her. Turning to Melanie's lover, he swiftly snapped several pictures with his phone. When the man realized, he snarled, clenched his fists, and took a threatening step forward. Easy now, Adam warned, raising a hand, causing the man to back off. Adam turned to Melanie with a smirk. Seems your boyfriend's more lover than fighter. His tone hardened. Grab your things from the house and leave. Don't be here when I return, Mel. I meant it when I said I never want to see you again. Adam, please, she pleaded, collapsing onto the driveway in tears. He paid her no mind and headed to his car while she sat on the driveway, her hands covering her face as she wept. En route to his office, Adam made a stop at a dumpster, disposing of his phone and the toy weapon tucked in his pocket. Glad these things look so real, he grinned coldly. Back at his desk, Adam emailed one of the photos he had taken. Surprisingly, he received a call shortly after. This is Dr. Mayfair. Did you just send me a photo? Dr. Mayfair, forgive the intrusion again, but do you know the man in the photo? His name might be Carl. Is the woman beside him your wife? My ex-wife, to be precise. Lovely woman. I recall her being in one of my classes. Last year. As for the man, I recognize him. He's Carl Mannheim, one of my dissertation students. Carl Mannheim, good to know, doctor. I have some business to attend to with Mr. Mannheim. So he's the serpent in your Garden of Eden? In a manner of speaking. But my Eve wasn't exactly innocent. Ah, I see, quite intriguing. Well, I'm glad to have assisted you, though I'm sorry it's not the outcome you desired. Thank you, doctor. I appreciate your time and help, regardless of the outcome. Good luck to you, my boy, and keep your spirits up. Things have a way of working out, speaking from experience. 2 months later, Adam sat with his lawyer, feeling irked. Any word from Mel's lawyer? How's the divorce proceeding? Yes, I spoke with Hannah Montrose yesterday, and she sent a counteroffer to Melanie today. The good news is, Mel's agreed not to contest the divorce. After hearing the recordings you made, Hannah persuaded her not to risk them in court. But the bad news is, now that Melanie's accepted the marriage is over, she's keen on getting as much financial compensation as possible. Damn, she deceives me, gets caught, and then expects me to pay up. It's unfair. What's my cheating wife after? Typically, we'd see request for dividing assets, but there's little to divide here. You rent, no pension, and minimal savings. Your only asset is your business share, which is running at a loss. Seems she's banking on it failing, so she's only asking for alimony. I appreciate her vote of confidence, Adam snapped sarcastically. So, how much alimony is she seeking? Considerably more than our offer. The lawyer handed him the document and Adam gasped. This is absurd. She knows I can't afford it. If I have to pay that much monthly, I'm essentially bankrupting my business to satisfy her. Melanie won't negotiate, so Hannah will suggest it to Judge Abernathy. I won't hand over that much without a fight. We'll take our chances in court. Understood, Adam, but remember, Judge Abernathy holds all the power. You're at his mercy. About a month later, Adam sat anxiously in court. After arguments from both sides, Judge Abernathy adjourned. Any thoughts on how it's going? Adam whispered to his lawyer. Hard to say. It could swing either way, or the judge might suggest a compromise. They stood as Judge Abernathy returned, then sat again as he called the opposing counsels to the bench. I assume your positions remain unchanged? The judge stated. The lawyers exchanged looks. Yes, Your Honor. Good. Before I decide, I'd like to question Mrs. Weatherby. Hannah Montrose looked tense but motioned for Melanie to approach. Stay calm, she whispered, and remember, address him as Your Honor. Adam's lawyer leaned in. Usually it's not good when the judge wants to hear more from the other side. Adam watched sourly as his soon-to-be ex-wife testified, noting the judge's attention on her. I think we're in trouble, he murmured to his lawyer. The judge reviewed papers, then turned to Melanie. Mrs. Weatherby, it seems the primary dispute is the alimony amount. Your offer is substantially higher than Mr. Weatherby's, correct? Yes, Your Honor. How do you justify your proposed amount? We're asking for more considering my years of marriage and the need to start anew, Your Honor. However, Mr. Weatherby claims his sole income is from his struggling business. Why do you believe Mr. Weatherby can afford your proposed support? We argue he's artificially deflating his income by investing in his business. Adjustments could easily cover the support I seek. The judge remarked, examining the financial statement. It shows negative cash flow, Your Honor. Adam's accountants can manipulate numbers to yield any desired result. The judge raised his eyebrows. Are you suggesting the financial statements are fraudulent? Melanie turned pale and shook her head firmly. Noticing this, Melanie swiftly corrected herself. No, Your Honor, not at all. Earnings can be deferred and investments accelerated, all within accepted accounting principles. He simply invests heavily in his company. Adam's blood pressure spiked. He whispered angrily, "What a manipulative move. She knows it's untrue. She's just trying to pressure me into giving her what she wants, regardless of the truth." Meanwhile, Judge Abernathy reviewed the case summary. Until now, we focused on your husband's business investments, Mrs. Weatherby. However, Mr. Weatherby has also invested significantly in you, or at least in your education. If you're referring to my MBA, Your Honor, Adam did pay for my tuition, but I worked diligently, completed all coursework, work exams, and wrote my dissertation. I've dedicated myself for the past 2 years, including summers. And you recently graduated? Yes, sir, with honors, she proudly confirmed. He nodded. Very well, Mrs. Weatherby, that's all. You may be seated. Returning to her lawyer, Melanie hugged her in relief as the judge adjusted his glasses and glanced at both parties. After reviewing all evidence, I'll grant Mrs. Weatherby the full financial support requested, the judge announced. Adam winced, and Melanie hugged her lawyer in joy. But the judge wasn't finished. This settlement provides for a comfortable living without employment for Mrs. Weatherby, despite her recent completion of a degree that should qualify her for a lucrative position. To incentivize the use of her education, I'm awarding alimony for 6 months only. 6 months? That's unfair, Melanie protested. I can, and I have, the judge replied, striking the gavel. Next case. Her lawyer swiftly escorted Melanie away, though she continued to protest until a bailiff intervened. Do I only have to pay alimony for 6 months? I can manage that, Adam remarked to his lawyer as they left the courtroom. Pretty good outcome, his lawyer agreed. I thought we were in trouble when the judge favored her, but he wasn't impressed with her tactics. Not many husbands fare so well in divorce court. Wonder what swayed him in my favor. You don't think her pleading no contest to the infidelity charge played a role? He shouldn't have considered it when deciding the financial settlement. Adam glanced back to see Melanie still arguing with her lawyer and chuckled. Well, whatever it is, I'm satisfied with the outcome. At that moment, a hand rested on his shoulder, and Adam turned to see an elderly man, vaguely familiar. I wanted to introduce myself, the gray-haired man explained. I'm Professor Mayfair. Adam firmly shook his hand. Professor, it's a pleasant surprise to meet you in person, sir. Thank you again for your assistance. What brought you to court today? The elderly man smiled. After our talk, I became curious about your case, so I decided to drop by and see how things turned out. His smile widened. It also gave me the chance to speak with an old friend of mine, Judge Abernathy. He shook Adam's hand again. I'm glad things worked out for you. If I can help in the future, I'd be glad to. He winked. Us divorced husbands need to stick together. As the professor left, Adam watched him go. Interesting, he muttered, then shook his head. Out of the corner of his eye, he thought he saw Gary in the crowd, but she vanished when he looked. It took a while before she dialed a familiar number on her phone, and when it was answered, she hesitantly said, Hello, Jerry. It's me, Melanie. Melanie, what a surprise. Haven't heard from you since you moved to Florida. How are you? To be honest, it's been tough. That's why I called. I needed someone to talk to. Sure, tell me how you're doing. Are you working? That's part of the problem. I thought my MBA would land me a job, but employers here value experience more. Most offers I got were internships. Wow, that sounds tough. So where are you now? When alimony ended, I was desperate. Tried admin work, but it was terrible. Now I'm in financial advising. That's why I called. I can help analyze your finances if you're interested. Many overlook this. There was a brief pause. Oh, Melanie, I'd like to assist you, but my finances are stable right now, and I'm pretty confident about the future. I don't think I need help. I understand. No worries, Jerry. I hear that often, but I thought I'd give it a shot. It's tough to break into this industry. In fact, I had to move back in with my mom to cut costs. Are you living with her now? What about you and Carl? Don't mention him. We split shortly after moving here. You broke up. What happened? It was awful. Carl dropped out of school. His thesis got rejected, and he refused to work. He became bitter and aggressive, so I had to involve the police. That sounds rough, Melanie, but now you're free. You can go out, meet new people, and have fun. Remember how much you missed that when you were married? Melanie sighed. But outings require money, Jerry, and I aren't well off right now. And going out isn't as glamorous or exciting as I thought. Actually, there are more creeps than good guys. Changing the subject, Melanie asked, "How about you, Jerry? Anyone special?" "My life's taking a turn. I'm getting married next month." "Married? That's incredible. Who's the lucky guy?" "You know him. It's Adam." "Adam? Are you engaged to my Adam? You can't do this." "I already did. We'll have a small ceremony at our new home, then head to Paris for our honeymoon." "New house? Honeymoon in Paris? Can Adam afford all that?"
"Not only has my situation changed, but Adam's has too."
The same month you moved to Florida, he landed a big order he'd been working on. After that, his business took off. His new product is in high demand in the auto industry. And there's more. Earlier this year, a large manufacturer made him an offer to buy his business for a fortune. He agreed, and the deal's closing next week. So you see, our financial future is secure. Melanie could barely speak, but Gary persisted, her tone now altered. "You know, Melanie, all of this could have been yours if you were content with what you had. I warned you from the start about the risks of your affair, and I cautioned you that there would be other women ready to step in if your marriage crumbled. But you were the one who encouraged me. You even came up with the plan." Suddenly, Melanie's voice rose in shock. "Oh my God, Jerry, it was you. You orchestrated everything from the beginning. I just shared an innocent fantasy with you, and you manipulated me into acting on it. You deceived me into thinking I could get away with an affair." "Melanie, you're exaggerating. I didn't make you do anything against your will. I merely provided you with the opportunity. And no, I didn't tell Adam about your lover. I simply set things up so they'd unfold as I wanted. I trusted you, Gary. I thought you were my friend." Gary chuckled. "You know what they say, all's fair in love and war. You won't get away with this. I'll make sure Adam knows what you did. You're a schemer." "I'm sorry, Melanie, but I have plans with Adam tonight. I'll block your number after we hang up. You're despicable." Meanwhile, Jerry welcomed her fiancé home with a kiss. Adam mentioned receiving a letter from Melanie. "Really?" Jerry replied casually. "I almost forgot about her." "What'd she want?" Adam glanced at Jerry neutrally. "She claims you orchestrated everything to break us up. Pretty wild, huh?" Jerry took a look at the letter and smirked. Poor Melanie. She could have made her little jealousy act more convincing if she signed it "good friend." It took him a while to stop laughing.
I reclined in my chair, scanning the room and pondering the abundance of attractive women present. Why did Marc Lavaliere opt for my wife? What made her agree, and why did she leave me? With our kids growing more independent and likely not returning home soon, Linda and I had already outlined our plans for when we have the house to ourselves. Months back, I had entertained thoughts about the future dynamics between Linda and me, assuming we'd grow closer with increased quality time together. Then it dawned on me abruptly. Linda's vision of the future might not include me. I felt utterly foolish. That realization swept away all traces of sadness, leaving behind a simmering anger. I could sense the concern in the gazes around the table, as if they feared my head might explode or I might do something foolish. Dee, sounding anxious, inquired, "You all right, Jim?" On the far end of the dance floor, seated in a booth, were 4 striking young women, visible over Dee's shoulder. Why hadn't Marc Lavaliere chosen one of them? I observed them briefly before bursting into laughter, startling everyone at the table. My laughter echoed so loudly that it drew attention to our group, tears streaming down my face. Once my laughter subsided, I wiped my tears and flashed a broad smile to everyone, realizing my life had undergone a profound change. I was no longer bound by monogamy. The concern for my wife's feelings vanished as she no longer cared about mine. All eyes were fixed on me. Turning to Dee with a smile, I removed my wedding ring and handed it to her, leaving her astonished. "Pass this along to Linda when you see her. I have matters to attend to." Standing up, I tossed a $10 bill onto the table. "That's for my drink. Since you were so supportive of Linda's infidelity, you can cover it." As I walked away from the table, my former friends called out to me from the club entrance. I pondered what I would say if they attempted to follow me. But one thing was clear. Any husband who disregarded my warning and pursued me would meet a broken nose. Lost in thought, I contemplated Linda's pursuit of selfish pleasure and my own intentions for self-indulgence. Upon reaching the hotel, I inquired about available full-size suites at the front desk. The clerk regretfully informed me of their unavailability, but suggested a honeymoon suite instead, listing its numerous amenities. "I'll take it. There's no need to keep the room I'm currently in since it's late at night already. I'll cover the cost for both rooms. My wife will remain in the original room, while I'll be in the suite, I informed the young woman behind the desk. She gave me a puzzled look. I briefly thought you were arranging something special for your wife. After she handed me the key card for the suite and provided directions, I made a request. If my wife inquires about the key to my room, please refrain from giving it to her. Actually, could you leave specific instructions not to disclose my whereabouts if she asks? The young woman's expression turned curious, but she smiled nonetheless. I'll ensure the hotel staff receives your instructions, she assured me. I returned to my previous room to gather my belongings, leaving Linda's items behind in the trash bins. Taking the elevator to the top floor, I marveled at the spacious honeymoon suite, complete with a jacuzzi on the expansive balcony with a city view. I had brought an expensive tuxedo along in case we decided to indulge in late-night drinks at one of the upscale nearby restaurants. Donning my jacket, I made my way back to the club, stopping by the ATM for some cash. Upon my return, a long line had formed at the entrance. Approaching the doorman confidently, I slipped him a $100 bill with a smile. In return, he opened the door and welcomed me inside. My former friends were seated at a table as I entered. Scanning the club, I hoped to spot what I had observed earlier, a table by the dance floor occupied by 4 stunning young women. There were no men accompanying them, indicating it was likely a bachelorette party, which suited me perfectly. Walking through the club, Dee spotted me and attempted to wave and call my name as I passed their table. All eyes turned to me, but I paid them no heed, crossing the hall to approach a table occupied by 4 women. Why are 4 lovely ladies sitting without company? All 4 smiled at me, with the taller brunette laughing heartily and explaining, We're here for our friend. Some idiot left her for another woman, so we're here to lift her spirits. The brunette seemed a bit tipsy. Well, if you don't mind, I'd love to dance with your friend and help cheer her up. I turned to the petite redhead who smiled and offered her hand for me to help her out of the booth. As we danced, I inquired about her name. Samantha. I'm Jim, I introduced myself. How could someone be foolish enough to let go of such a beautiful woman? She responded, Because he's an idiot. We shared a laugh as we continued dancing and chatting. Samantha shared that she was studying nursing in college and grew up nearby. As a slower song began, we kept dancing. With the music now softer, Samantha asked, Are you married, Jim? I confessed we were no longer together. Was it your wife who danced with Mark Lavalier earlier? I noticed she disappeared after that dance, Samantha remarked. You weren't the only one who noticed, Jim. I flashed Samantha a sincere smile. Looks like you discovered our breakup at the same moment I did. Samantha returned the warmth with a smile, and we danced closely until the song's end. Both of us had recently experienced heartache from people we cared about, and holding each other felt comforting. As the music ceased, we made our way back to Samantha's table. Addressing the others, Samantha declared, I know we agreed no men would join us, but I want Jim to stay. The brunette, teasingly playing with us, responded, I don't know, we did say no guys. How about I treat us to a couple bottles of champagne to make up for it? I proposed. I'm not sure. A deal's a deal, Samantha countered. She smiled at her friends and added, We saw Mark Lavalier leaving with his wife. In unison, they exclaimed, Didn't see a damn thing. 3 of the ladies shifted around the booth to accommodate Samantha and me. Before I could inquire about their names, the blonde beside Samantha questioned, Do you two have an open marriage? Absolutely not, I affirmed. Then another blonde chimed in. What did she say to you? Nothing. She claimed she was going to the restroom but slipped out the back of the club with Mark. I gestured with my thumb over my shoulder, and all my former acquaintances covered for her. Just then, the waitress approached. Inquiring if everyone enjoyed champagne, I received smiles all around. 2 bottles of your finest champagne, I ordered, eliciting applause from the girls. Before they could pose another question, I introduced myself. Their names were Kim, Christy, and Susan, all nursing students alongside Samantha. After the champagne arrived and everyone had a full glass, Christy, the brunette, inquired about my plans regarding my wife. As far as I'm concerned, our relationship ended the moment she walked out the door. Do you have kids? Unfortunately, yes. A son and daughter, 15 and 13. But soon they'll be more independent and I'll address things with my wife. Samantha linked arms with me, declaring loudly, Forget about it, you're with me tonight. We toasted with our glasses and indulged in champagne. I shared a few jokes, and the girls reciprocated. Laughter and drinks flowed as they danced with guys and each other, while Samantha remained seated with me, her arm around me. As the evening wore on, Christy became upset, abruptly rising from the table and dashing off. We all turned to see where she went. Apparently, Dee had approached to talk to me, but Christy intercepted her near my ex-friend's table. Though we couldn't hear their conversation, we witnessed Christy jabbing Dee's chest repeatedly while yelling in her face, ending the confrontation. Dee welled up with tears and resumed her seat. Then, Christy vented her frustration at the entire table. The surrounding tables chuckled at the discomfort of my former companions. Upon Christy's return, Kim and Susan exchanged high fives with her. Christy sipped her champagne, flashed me a smile, and declared, "None of these fools are coming near our table for the rest of the night." Glancing back at their table, I noticed they were all getting up to depart. Both Jane and Dee appeared teary-eyed, and none of them glanced our way. "What happened, Christy? I saw that woman muster the courage to approach you," I questioned. "So I pushed her away and let them know exactly what I think about those who aid cheaters. You left quite an impression." "They obviously hoped I'd forgive Linda to ease their consciences. For that, I owe you a kiss." Samantha seized my head, playfully protesting, "Oh, you really shouldn't." Then she kissed me fervently, egged on by the other girls. After breaking the kiss, Samantha bestowed a sweet smile upon me. Kim teased, "Get a room, you two." "Actually," I interjected, "I have a suite in a hotel nearby, and you ladies seem unfit to drive. If we hurry, we can still have champagne delivered to our room." After settling the bar tab, the four of us made our way to the hotel. Samantha clung to my arm while the others leaned on us for support. During the reception, I ordered 4 bottles of champagne for our room. When I mentioned to the receptionist that it was a honeymoon suite, the ladies burst into giggles. Riding the elevator, they began singing the wedding march. Samantha blushed deeply but held on to me even tighter. As we neared our room, the ladies joked about me carrying the bride over the threshold. Samantha looked at me with her captivating eyes and said, "You don't have to if you don't want to." I pushed open the door, scooped Samantha into my arms, and carried her inside. Once in the room, Samantha embraced me and kissed me passionately. The ladies found it amusing, but their teasing ceased when Christy spotted the jacuzzi on the balcony. Before I could set Samantha down, they had all stripped down to their bras and underwear and were in the jacuzzi. Setting Samantha down, she continued to hold my hand and smile at me. There was a knock on the door. "Champagne delivery for your room," the voice announced. We brought the champagne to the ladies, who joked and giggled. Susan insisted I was overdressed and urged me to undress. I laughed, explaining I was keeping Samantha company. They playfully urged Samantha to join them in the jacuzzi, but she simply smiled and led me back to the room. We headed to the bridal suite, while one of her friends sang the wedding march from the balcony, laughing hysterically. The next morning, I awoke with Samantha wrapped around me and 3 other undressed ladies sprawled across the king-sized bed. They must have joined us later. As Samantha and I got out of bed, she watched me. I smiled at her and she returned the gesture. "Did you enjoy yourself, Jim?" she asked. "Yes, it was the best night of my life. Any regrets?" "Absolutely none." "Join me in the shower," Samantha beckoned, slipping out of bed and pulling me towards the bathroom, eager to try something new that I had never done with Linda. Once in the shower, I lifted Samantha up and positioned her on my hardness while standing. Pressing her against the wall, she wrapped her legs around my waist. Although the standing position was challenging, it led to one of the most intense peaks I had ever experienced. Samantha had already climaxed twice, each time loudly. Exiting the shower, Samantha and I discovered that our passionate lovemaking had awakened the other ladies. Despite their hangovers, they were in good spirits, ordering room service and sipping mimosas. Christy remarked, "I can't wait to try that shower. You two made it sound like it's the best shower ever." The 3 girls burst into laughter as Samantha and I exchanged smiles. After everyone had showered and departed, except for Samantha, who requested a ride home, she nestled close to me during the drive. "Jim, I understand what your wife did was awful, but you still have the option to reconcile with her. If not, I'd be happy if we could see each other again," Samantha expressed hopefully. "I would like that, Samantha. Right now, I'm not inclined to return to my ex-wife. I had a great time with you. You're what I need at the moment. So give me a call if you think we can make it work," I replied, kissing Samantha at her doorstep. As she opened the door, Christy greeted me from the couch with a smile and a wave. Exiting, I realized that I was postponing a decision regarding Linda. Returning to the club had been a spontaneous response to her infidelity. While it didn't resolve my issues with Linda, it certainly lifted my spirits. Upon arriving home, I took a moment to unwind, sinking into a chair in the dimly lit living room. Lost in thought about how to navigate the end of my fractured marriage with minimal impact on my children, I didn't bother flicking on the light. Eventually, after an indeterminate amount of time, I heard a car pull into the driveway, followed by the sound of keys turning in the lock. "Jim, I'm home," her voice echoed, mirroring the tone I was accustomed to hearing upon her return from errands. As she shut the front door and flipped on the light, I turned to face her. She appeared unchanged. The same blue dress draped over her, dark hair cascading down her back, familiar features, rings adorning her fingers. Everything remained unchanged. It was as if nothing had transpired, as if she hadn't spent the entire night and morning betraying me with another man. This can't be real, I thought, expecting some visible difference, a trace of guilt or shame etched on her face. Yet there was nothing. "It's just me, same old me always," she remarked with a gentle smile, fully aware of my inner turmoil. "Nothing's altered here. My love for you is as steadfast as ever." I wish I could say the same. Hearing my own words, I realized the detached tone I adopted. Jim, with the countenance of a man devoid of emotion, I mused, gazing at Linda before gesturing toward our bedroom. "Don't start. Go take a shower," I instructed firmly. Despite attempting to interject, Linda eventually obeyed, retreating upstairs. After her shower, she returned downstairs. "Jim, where are my clothes from last night?" she inquired. "I believe they're still in the hotel room where you left them." "You didn't bring them back?" "No." As if on the cusp of reproach, Linda hesitated, realizing any criticism of my actions would only amplify her own misdeeds. Instead, she lapsed into silence, recognizing the futility of such an argument. "Why did you leave them, Linda?" she sighed in response. "It was Mark Lavalliere. He's wealthy and renowned, able to have any woman he desires. When he asked me to dance last night, I felt like the most sought-after woman in the room. He made me feel truly special," Linda gushed, still basking in the glow of the previous night. As she spoke, it was evident she had become lost in reminiscing about the moments shared with Mark, completely disengaged from our conversation. It was in that moment that I realized it was truly the end. Linda will forever treasure her time with Mark Lavalliere more than any moment with me. I was merely an afterthought, I reflected. "Do you love him?" I inquired. "No, I don't love him. It was merely physical. I love you, Jim," Linda replied. "You hesitated," I pointed out. "Linda, I recognize what that look means. You would have gone with him if he'd asked. It was just one night. It was just physical. The conversation ends here. I need time to think. Pack some things for yourself and the children and stay with your parents for the week." "But Jim, the discussion is closed. If you truly want to resolve this urgently, given how I'm feeling, you won't get the outcome you desire," Linda retorted. This time there was anger in my tone and expression. Linda packed her bag and departed. As soon as she was out of sight, I set my plan in motion. Seeing Linda at the doorway in her familiar blue dress, unchanged, triggered an epiphany. I realized that change was necessary for my survival. I contacted my boss, requesting 2 weeks off, then rented a truck and purchased supplies from the hardware store: wood, drywall, paint, and 2 exterior doors. Upon returning home, I gathered my tools and got to work. Firstly, I removed the front door and the surrounding windows. After cutting out a sizable opening, I installed the 2 front doors, positioning the old one on the right and the new one on the left. Then, I framed the wall along the main entrance, dividing the house into 2, and applied drywall. I was converting it into a duplex. A new back door was installed on the left side where the new kitchen would be situated, mirroring the layout of the other side. The office was transformed into a 3rd bedroom on my side, while the dining room became the 3rd bedroom on Linda's side. Once completed, each side of the duplex nearly matched, except for the detached garage on Linda's side, which I planned to replicate on mine later. I changed the garage lock and the access code on the garage door to ensure only I had entry. Additionally, I erected a fence in the backyard, dividing it precisely in half, thus creating a duplex. I made daily calls to my children, informing them of my ongoing house renovations. Despite Linda's persistent request to talk, I insisted I wasn't ready to listen. A few days later, I reached out to Samantha, eager to hear her voice and perhaps arrange more time together. "I thought you had forgotten about me," she remarked. "I can't get you out of my mind. Would you consider going on a trip together?" I proposed. No, stop teasing me, she responded. I'm serious. I was thinking of a weekend getaway, just you and me, I clarified. Really? Samantha's interest was piqued. Yes, how about the Bahamas? I suggested. Sounds tempting. Can you get away this weekend? Fly out on Thursday and return on Tuesday? I asked eagerly. Yes, I'll just grab my phone and passport. We can buy everything else there, Samantha agreed. After exchanging excitement about our upcoming adventure, I bid her farewell to finalize my travel arrangements. A spontaneous trip to the Bahamas wasn't cheap, but why not take the chance? If Linda decides on a divorce, she'll receive half of our savings and my salary for child support. It amused me to think of it as Linda indirectly funding part of the trip with Samantha. I transferred our savings into a bank account solely under my name and redirected my salary to that account. While I doubted Linda would cancel the credit card, I wanted to ensure access to funds just in case. Working tirelessly for 16 hours a day, I managed to erect most of the walls, albeit with some areas left unfinished on my part. By Wednesday, I had painted and trimmed the central wall on Linda's side. I knew I'd later need to separate utilities like electricity, gas, and water, but for now, since Linda's side shared utilities, she couldn't disconnect my side. Wednesday night, I instructed Linda to bring the kids home the following morning. Thursday morning, I secured my section of the house and waited outside, sitting on a chair. As they arrived and stepped out of the car, they appeared bewildered on the front lawn. Emma broke the silence. Dad, what's going on? I turned our home into a duplex. Like it? I asked, to which they all stared at me incredulously. Don't worry, guys. I've finished the right side and moved your belongings to your new rooms, I assured them, leading them through the new layout while Linda attended to their bags. They were speechless. Our tour concluded in the living room of the right side. But Dad, the living room is much smaller, Tommy observed. Don't fret, you won't even notice. Plus, I plan to add a garage on the other side and eventually a pool with a jacuzzi, I promised, eliciting smiles from the children. Linda prompted the children to unpack while she exchanged glances with me, seemingly eager to talk. Instead, I joined the kids, helping them settle in and ensuring they had everything they needed. After unpacking, I pulled out sandwiches from a local deli, and we gathered around the kitchen table for lunch. Dad, what's all this about? Emma queried, her focus mostly on Linda's reaction after spending the past few days with her. It was evident to Emma and Tommy that something was amiss, with their mother dodging their inquiries. Oh, we're nearing empty nest status. I've realized that things are bound to change. I'm just getting prepared, that's all, I mentioned. Gee, Dad, you could have at least talked to us first to see how we feel about it, Emma remarked. Well, actually, it was Mom's idea. She felt we needed a change. Something different, I explained, grinning at Linda, who appeared surprised. Mom, why make such a big decision without discussing it with us? Emma questioned. Yes, Mom, don't you care about our thoughts? Linda seemed puzzled. It was just a misunderstanding. Your father misinterpreted how I felt, Linda responded. I don't know, dear. You seemed quite certain then. Once I saw your unwavering commitment, I knew there was no turning back, I added, causing Linda to appear on the verge of tears before she left the room. Tommy asked, What's up with Mom lately? She's been crying over everything, I relayed. I shrugged and suggested they ask her. Before Emma could ask more, I informed them of my planned trip out of town, ensuring them I'd call every evening but be unreachable otherwise. I kissed their heads and swiftly made my way to the door. I wondered if they noticed my lack of goodbye to their mom, who was in the bedroom. I picked Samantha up and we hit the road. It was an incredible experience. First-class flights, a luxurious resort, and royal treatment. A weekend filled with sun, sand, waves, food, and drinks. Simply fantastic. Samantha was genuinely appreciative and showed her enjoyment at every turn. By the time we headed back, we were both bronzed and so familiar with each other's bodies. Dropping Samantha off on Tuesday, she kissed me passionately. Do you want to spend one more night? She asked. Yes, but we need to meet in person sometime, and you have classes tomorrow. Call me before bed. I need to hear your voice. After our final kiss, I drove home, feeling content. Samantha mentioned last night that she could see herself falling for someone like me. Pulling up to my house, I noticed Linda's car in her driveway. Opting to avoid her, I parked on the street in front of my side. While unpacking, Linda knocked on my door. You're back, she noted. Yes, I am. Can we talk? Sure, what's on your mind? Can I come in? No, this is my space, and you're not welcome here. Ever, I asserted, leaving Linda visibly taken aback before she retreated to her room. The realization hit me that living on her side of the duplex was not going to happen. We sat at her kitchen table. "Jim, I love you. I want things to go back to normal," she said. "It won't happen," I replied. "Why not?" she asked. "Because if you haven't noticed, you did something that changed how I feel about you forever." "That shouldn't define us," she argued. "Actually, it does. Nothing will erase what happened or how I feel about it." "But I still love you," I said, gathering my thoughts. "Imagine we're on a date with friends. You leave me for another man and spend the entire night and morning with him. If this happened on our first date, would there have been a second?" "But Jim, it was Mark," she pleaded. "I don't care who it was. You chose someone else over me. You chose to sneak out of the club and be with Mark Lavaliere. It was just one night. You've had your whole life to show me you love me. The moment someone more famous spoke to you, I became insignificant," I explained. "Does this mean I should keep you away from all famous people? There's a marathon this weekend. Will you sleep with the winner?" she countered. "Jim, that's not fair," she protested. In a calm voice, I responded, "So, now you want fairness? You want a chance to minimize what you did, to talk me out of my anger, to shame me for feeling betrayed. A fair chance to accuse me of not prioritizing our family over my own pain. It seems I'm the only one expected to be fair in this relationship." I reached for her hand, and she reluctantly took it. We locked eyes, and I knew I was about to deliver a painful blow. Linda needed to understand how our future relationship would unfold, and I was eager to show her. "It's too late, Linda. Too late. Yes, it's too late. I found someone else," she revealed. "No," I countered. Linda recoiled, pulling her hands from mine. "Do you know who it is?" she asked. "I'm sure Dee and your friends told you about the redhead I danced with, the one who held me tightly," I confirmed. "The woman who took your place on the anniversary you discarded when the words 'replaced' and 'threw you away' were said came to her." I gazed into Linda's eyes and detected sadness. I understood that Dee must have sent Linda pictures of Samantha and me dancing closely, resembling lovers. With simmering anger in her voice, Linda asked, "Are you doing this to retaliate against me? Introducing some 24-year-old girl to me to even the score?" "Actually, she's 21. I spent 4 days with her in the Bahamas. Remember that dream vacation we always talked about? It was fantastic." I knew I wore a broad smile as I spoke, unable to contain my excitement. The weekend truly had been remarkable. Linda glared at me once I finished speaking. I sensed my words had stoked her anger. I knew my lingering smirk only fueled it further. Reminding myself of the children, I took a deep breath, willing my face to relax and the grin to fade. Linda's eyes burned with fury, indicating she was about to unleash a torrent of condemnation. But upon seeing my grin resurface, she realized I anticipated every word she intended to utter. Linda froze. Then she let out a slow exhale, shut her mouth, and rested her hand on the table. We sat in silence, locked in a stare. I could tell Linda wanted to lash out at me, to scold me for my actions. However, she recognized she had lost her moral high ground. The leverage she relied on in our relationship was built on love and trust, qualities she had casually discarded for a single night of passion. It dawned on Linda that her actions had exacted a heavier toll than she had anticipated. I'm certain that when Linda made the decision to be with Mark, she believed she was just cashing in some of the chips she had accumulated throughout our marriage. It finally dawned on her that she had recklessly put everything on the line. Linda sat silently for a moment, her hands clasped together on the table, staring off. "It doesn't matter. I love you. Yes, you keep insisting that your love holds special significance. But why should I value your love when it's clear that my love for you means nothing to you after what you've done? So why should I care about your love? But I don't want to lose you." "Well, I fail to understand how you thought you could shatter my trust completely and still expect to keep me. You took me for granted, and now you don't deserve me." Linda appeared bewildered. "I'm going to my place. There's still a lot of work to be done around the house. I'll be back for dinner with you and the kids. Please don't bother me until then." I stood up and headed back to my apartment. Linda wept as I departed. Leaving Linda was incredibly painful. I longed to embrace her like before, but deep down I knew there was no returning to what we once were. The Linda I knew as my wife was gone and would never return. Anything I have with her now will serve as a painful reminder of everything we could have had, everything she carelessly destroyed without a second thought or a hint of remorse. Before dinner, the kids and I ventured to my side of the house to explore. I showed them the new kitchen area and my plan to replace the back wall with glass overlooking the pool. They seemed concerned, As they observed the fence dividing the backyard, they grasped that this side would be mine. Then I indicated where their new rooms would be on my side of the house. "Dad, why do I need 2 bedrooms here?" Tommy inquired. "Because this side is going to be my home, and that side will be your mother's home," I explained. "Emma, are you and Mom getting divorced?" Tommy asked. "Dad, Mom won't say anything no matter how many times we ask," Emma added. "No, we're just separated. I don't want to be a weekend dad, so I thought it would be best to split the house, and you two can choose which side you want to live on." Just as we were about to continue, Linda popped her head through the front door to announce that dinner was ready. We ate in silence, with Linda appearing tense. It was evident that the children had picked up on more than we realized. Tommy blurted out too loudly, "I'll move in with Dad once he's done decorating my room." Linda's face registered shock. "Dad told you we're splitting up." "We're not. It's just a misunderstanding, and we're still discussing it," Linda clarified. Emma slammed her hand on the table and exclaimed, "Who's changing? I want to know." Emma and Tommy exchanged looks between Linda and me. I locked eyes with Linda, who avoided my gaze and stared at her plate. When Linda began to cry, the children got their answer. I informed the children that their mother was exhausted and needed rest. Guiding Linda to the bedroom, I assisted her in undressing and tucked her into bed. Planting a quick kiss on her forehead, reminiscent of comforting a child after a nightmare, I switched off the light and closed the door. My focus shifted to Linda, akin to handling a grown child who had committed a grave offense and faced a lifelong sentence. While I still harbored love for her, she was no longer a prominent figure in my daily life or thoughts. Initially, I checked on Tommy in his room. He lay on his bed, engrossed in correspondence with his friends. When I asked if he wanted to talk, he declined. Proceeding to Emma's room, I found her angry and tearful. "Why did she do this, Dad?" she questioned. "You'll have to ask her. Forgiveness isn't easy," I replied. "Then I don't know if I can forgive myself," she lamented. "I understand, but I want us to remain a family," I reassured her. "We are. I just won't share a room with Mom anymore," she declared. We embraced, exchanged declarations of love, and I returned to my part of the house. This became our new routine. As I typically left for work before the kids woke up, our mornings remained unchanged. Linda and I continued to split responsibilities for shuttling the kids to their various activities and events. Family dinners persisted in Linda's section of the house whenever possible. Despite Linda's attempts to discuss our situation weekly, I rebuffed her, stating my reluctance to engage. School functions became noticeably different. I consciously avoided standing or sitting near Linda during our children's events. If she approached me, I quickly excused myself to the restroom and relocated upon my return. I was rarely alone for long, as single or divorced acquaintances often gravitated toward me. They invariably inquired about our relationship status, to which I consistently replied that we were separated as of the following month. I invested in new attire, appliances, kitchen fixtures, and furnishings for my side of the house, transforming it into a stylish bachelor pad with a large TV and updated entertainment system. I spared no expense. When I acquired a high-end convertible, Linda voiced concerns about our finances. "Jim, can we afford all this? The car must have been expensive." "Linda, my car was older than yours by 8 years, and I needed an upgrade. You've always replaced your car twice as often as I did. So I decided to catch up on those missed years with my new car. And as for everything else that's new, did you really expect me to live in a rundown place? What about the furniture? I thought I was considerate by not making you part with any of the furniture you chose for your home. I'd be happy to share it with you." "It's fine. Your taste in furniture never appealed to me." "Why didn't you say something earlier?" "I kept quiet because I wanted you to be happy. Furniture wasn't a big deal to me." I let her ponder that for a moment. "Don't worry, we're financially stable. Actually, the house is paid off, and once the kids move out, my side will be too big for me. I plan to rent it out for extra income, so money won't be an issue." Linda flashed me her most approving smile, the "someone's getting lucky today" smile, and reached out to pat my shoulder. "I'm not complaining. I like your new car, and you look great in your new clothes." "Thanks. I can't take all the credit. Tommy and Emma wanted a convertible to drive, and Samantha helped me pick out the clothes and furniture. Turns out we have similar tastes." At the mention of Samantha, Linda's smile faltered, and her hand dropped from my shoulder. "Oh, I was just curious." With that, she turned and walked away. I hadn't meant to flaunt Samantha in Linda's face, but she was becoming a significant part of my life. I also realized that I often thought about Samantha and seldom about Linda's feelings. Samantha started frequenting my side of the house regularly. Eventually, Tommy moved into my side as his main bedroom. Emma, who had mostly stayed on Linda's side, began spending more time with Samantha. Samantha seemed to assume the role of Emma's cool older sister. Before long, Samantha was spending weekends and most weeknights with me. The only contention arose when I insisted Samantha join us for family dinners for the second time. Linda remained polite, but it was evident she didn't want this to become a routine. The next day, as I was leaving for work, Linda intercepted me. "Jim, I appreciate our conversation, but I'd prefer if you didn't bring your girlfriend to our dinners. That's our time to be a family with the kids." "This is great. Going forward, I'll skip dinner when Samantha isn't there, but I'll also extend an open invitation for the kids to join me and Samantha for dinner if they want." "That's not fair, Jim. Dinner time is our only chance to be a family together." "So, are we talking about fairness now, Linda?" "All right, let's be honest here. Samantha is becoming a significant part of my life, and I want her to be more involved. Samantha gets along well with the kids. Excluding her from our family dinners doesn't seem fair to her." "Fair to me or fair to the kids? If you want to exclude her, you'll be excluding me too." "But Jim..." "Linda, your idea of honesty has always been self-serving. Forget about my feelings. I bet you thought you were being honest when you snuck out the back door to be with Marc Lavaliere." Even though we weren't living together anymore, it was surprising to see how Linda still thought she could manipulate me easily. "Linda, you threw integrity out the window that night. So if you don't like it, fairness would be for you to start cooking dinners on my side, and I'll let you join us. Samantha loves cooking and she's great at it." With tears in her eyes, Linda said, "I'm sorry I brought this up. Samantha is more than welcome to join us for dinner anytime she wants." After the pool and hot tub were finished, Tommy particularly enjoyed hanging out with Kim, Christy, and Susan by the new pool. They shamelessly flirted with Tommy, engaging in a friendly competition to see who could make him blush the most. Their competition escalated with tighter swimsuits, but Christy had an advantage with her ample curves. When she kissed Tommy in the pool, pressing her chest against him, she won the contest. Tommy couldn't leave the pool for a good 10 minutes despite the cold water. Tommy was undoubtedly the winner in their game, gaining confidence and eventually getting a girlfriend at school. Once the girls met Tommy's girlfriend, they stopped flirting with him and treated her like the luckiest girl. Samantha has some amazing friends. And no, I never allowed Linda to visit my side of the house. I didn't want her complicating my relationship with Samantha. Unfortunately, a few years later, Samantha graduated from high school and our relationship ended. I could see it in Samantha's expression at Susan's wedding, where we attended together. I realized I was essentially becoming her provider due to our age gap. While it didn't bother me, I sensed it bothered Samantha. Despite our wonderful rapport, spending entire weekends together and integrating with each other's families, there was an unspoken tension. When Samantha hinted at relocating, I proposed to her, but she expressed her desire to adhere to a family tradition instead. Although she didn't explicitly say it, I could sense her internal conflict. I was perfect for her in many ways, just not the right age. I felt like Samantha was taking me for granted, assuming that great men like me were abundant. I subtly tried to make her realize that her rigid standards were creating an insurmountable barrier for any man. Just like with Linda, my success seemed to backfire, as Samantha seemed to think I was interchangeable. I reminded Samantha of Linda's similar mindset, and where it led her, Samantha adamantly denied ever making the same mistake, sealing our fate. Ultimately, I understood Samantha's decision. I assured her that if she ever changed her mind, I would be there for her. Perhaps we might reconnect later in life when the age gap isn't as significant. I cherished every moment spent with Samantha, appreciating her honesty in our conversations, unlike Linda's deceitful actions. As for Linda's friends, who were once my own, they occasionally tried to persuade me to reconcile with Linda, but their arguments fell flat. I would counter their arguments with the reality of how it feels to be cheated on by your spouse, which they seemed to find acceptable and even encouraged, based on what I witnessed that night. Actually, I believe it wasn't mere chance that led us to a club frequented by Marc Lavaliere. I just happened to be married to the most attractive woman. Call it karma. A few months later, I heard that the girls had switched their girls' night out to a new club, one where Marc Lavaliere was known to frequent without informing their husbands. I casually mentioned to Dave, a coworker, that I saw Dee dancing with Marc at the club. Dave's friend even noticed that Marc vanished about an hour later, coinciding with the departure of the group of ladies from the club. However, Dave's friend didn't witness Dee leaving with the group. When confronted, all the wives denied being at the club and insisted it was a mistake. But days later, Dave's friend shared a photo showing Mark Lavaliere conversing with the wives at the table. Eventually, the wives admitted their presence at the club, but each claimed no one left with Mark. However, their conflicting stories eventually revealed the truth. Reluctant to betray their friend, the wives refused to identify who left with Mark. By the time they disclosed it was Dee, the damage to trust had already been done, according to what I heard. During a meeting of husbands to compare their wives' accounts, Dave aptly summarized the situation. He noted how the wives covered for each other for a long time and how easily they lied. This wasn't their first girls' night out. How could they be sure it wasn't Dee's turn to have an encounter with Mark Lavaliere or someone else? Each husband observed the expressions on their wives' faces when Mark Lavaliere approached them. That evening at our table, everyone overheard their wives condoning Linda's behavior and expressing envy over her opportunity. After Linda attended the first bachelorette party, all the husbands became familiar with her. They were initially pleased with the newfound excitement in the bedroom, as Linda discussed her encounter with Mark. However, a few months later, one husband jokingly complained about hating sleeping on silk sheets. After comparing notes, they realized both sets of silk sheets were new and identical in color. In discussions with other husbands, it came to light that 4 couples had recently acquired new white silk sheets for their beds. Following Dee's night with Mark, the husbands grew concerned that their wives were revisiting their own encounters with him. All 4 couples ended up divorcing within a year. I learned of this when Dave, the first to divorce, apologized to me and explained the events leading to his split. Subsequently, each husband personally expressed regret to me for their involvement that night with Linda. They all essentially admitted that if they had stood up for me, it might have sent a clearer message to their own wives, potentially saving their marriages. As for Mark Lavaliere, his habit of pursuing married women eventually angered the wrong person. No one knows who, but as Mark exited the club with his latest conquest, someone in a ski mask stunned him with a taser. Before Mark could recover, the assailant struck him in the groin. While Mark screamed in pain, the attacker severely injured both of his kneecaps. Despite having video footage, no one was ever apprehended. There were too many husbands with motives and opportunities. Mark lost his ability to walk. Regarding Linda, our last discussion about our relationship occurred on the day Emma moved out. By then, we were already divorced, and I had leased out my portion of the house, relocating to a seaside condo. Standing in the driveway, Linda asked if she could speak to me after Emma left for college. "Jim, I still love you. I made a terrible mistake, and I've regretted it every day since. I haven't dated or even glanced at another man since then. I know you haven't been in a serious relationship with anyone since Samantha, and I'd like you to move back in with me, just to see how things go." Linda then removed a necklace from around her neck and handed it to me. Hanging from it was my wedding ring, the same ring I had given to Dee the night Linda left me. Linda gazed at me with hope in her eyes. "You still don't grasp what went awry, Linda. That night you believed it was a test of my love for you, but in reality it was a test of your love for me. But I truly love you. No, you cherish what we once shared. You loved our seemingly flawless marriage, having the ideal husband and children. You appreciated that I didn't treat you like an object or a trophy wife, that we made decisions together. You relished our carnal moments, even if less frequent, as intense as our initial encounters. You admired that I prioritized your feelings above all else. You valued the financial stability I provided for your pursuits. But most of all, you treasured my unwavering trust in you, without hesitation. Now you claim to love me more than ever, realizing you won't find another who could make you as happy. No one will ever love you as intensely as I once did." Linda remained motionless, holding the necklace at arm's length, her grip tightening until her hand turned white. "You failed to appreciate what we had, and now it's lost. I can't be near you anymore. I'll never again give you the chance to hurt me like you did. I thought it was us against the world, but you destroyed us when you chose to be with Mark Lavaliere." Linda began to sob. "How many times must I say I regret it? It was never about Mark, Linda. You thought yourself fortunate when he took you home, but I was fortunate too. When I was at my lowest, your friends tried to convince me I was foolish, but you showed me we were truly special. Not because of you, but because of me. You left because my love was stronger, not yours. My love would never betray like you did. It was the melody to which we danced, making us unique. As I sat at this table, furious, contemplating, I saw Samantha across the room, looking sorrowful. When she caught my gaze, she smiled. That smile reminded me I still had a chance for happiness, to invest my love into a new we, a different us. You opened my eyes and set me free. With that, I climbed into my convertible and drove off with a grin. I couldn't wait to return home. Samantha left her job and moved in with me last week. Since then, she's shown me she'll always need me in her life. Trust is a beautiful thing. I've always believed life unfolds like a series of lessons, often in ways you least expect. Growing up in a modest Midwest town, baseball became my sanctuary. From the crack of a bat to the chatter of teammates, it was where I felt alive and capable. I honed my skills through hours of practice with my dad, who cheered for every hit and consoled every strikeout, molding my resilience and determination. As the years went by, my passion for baseball collided with academic ambition. By the time I reached college, I balanced the grueling demands of my engineering courses with the intensity of collegiate sports. I thrived on the challenge, savoring both intellectual growth and the camaraderie of the field. Still, beneath my love for the game, a gnawing realization emerged. Talent only takes you so far without adaptability. When my baseball dreams dimmed, I funneled my energy into a budding career in engineering. I realized that chasing success off the field required as much focus and perseverance as swinging for the fences. That determination paved the way for a career I loved, teaching and mentoring students while tackling real-world problems alongside brilliant minds. I was thriving in a life filled with purpose and connection. Curveballs never came naturally to me, not in baseball and certainly not in life. My collegiate years saw me thriving as a batter who could anticipate and crush fastballs. That skill made me a star on campus, but limited my prospects for professional baseball. I leaned into my education, recognizing its long-term value. Fast forward 25 years past graduation and a decade and a half into my career, I found myself living my dream. I was a full-time professor at a Texas engineering school, actively consulting for government projects and overseeing a prominent manufacturing lab. Life felt like a home run. My wife Tessa and I had settled into our ideal home, and our daughter Tori, a civil engineering junior, was attending the same university where I taught. Everything seemed perfectly aligned. The curveball came suddenly, unexpected and devastating, a call from Tori. "Daddy, what's going on?" she asked, her voice filled with urgency. "I stopped by the house and saw movers. Mom said she's moving out and that you two are having problems. Why didn't you tell me?" Her words left me stunned. I hesitated before replying. "Are you sure? This isn't some kind of joke?" "No, Daddy," Tori insisted. "I'm standing here watching them pack. Come home. She won't tell me what's going on. Did you do something?" Her question cut deep. I knew I wasn't a perfect husband, but I couldn't think of anything to drive Tessa away. I rushed home, where Tori met me, visibly upset. "She hasn't explained anything," Tori said. "Dad, I'll support you if you didn't do something horrible, did you?" "No, honey, I haven't," I assured her. "Let's go talk to her." Tori, ever the defender of fairness, decided to record the encounter for her sister Talitha. We walked into the house, where Tessa was directing movers. "Tessa, what's going on?" I asked. "I'm leaving, Dax," she said firmly. "I don't want to argue. It won't change anything and will only make me angry." Tori, furious, chimed in. "Mom, unless you explain this, you're only going to make me angrier. What are you doing?" Tessa, clearly uncomfortable, asked Tori to step outside to talk. Tori pulled her hand away, but we followed Tessa onto the deck. She shut the sliding door, paused, and finally said, "I met someone. He's new in town from New Mexico and works in real estate. I'm leaving to be with him. I've already filed for divorce, Dax." "Well, that's a shock," I replied. "You couldn't just cheat, could you? Instead, you had a magical connection and knew immediately he was the one?" Tori snorted. "Sure, Mom, that's how it works. How dumb do you think we are?" Tessa tried to respond, but Tori cut her off. "You're in real estate, Mom. No one tracks your time. How many showings or dinners did you have with Romeo?" "It's not like that," Tessa began. "Yes, it is," I said. "You don't just decide to leave your husband for a soulmate out of nowhere." "You're making it sound cheap," Tessa protested. "It is cheap," Tori snapped. "You're betraying Dad, and that's between you two. But what about me and Talitha? What's your plan for us? I love you both, Tessa said quickly. That hasn't changed. I still love you, Dax, but nothing, Tori interjected. You claim to love me, but how do you think I'm supposed to feel about you now, or how Talitha will feel about me? I know you're upset, Tessa said, but you'll see nothing will change. You'll even come to love Charles once you know him. Not happening, Tori hissed. I want nothing to do with a guy who goes after a married woman. I'm telling Talitha everything, and you know what's already changed? I've lost all respect for you. Don't bother bringing him near me. I'll spit on him. Tori, Tessa tried, but Tori cut her off again. You don't know anything, Mom. I've never been so disappointed. You've ruined everything. God, I hate you. Tessa turned to me helplessly. Dax, don't look at me, I said. This is on you. Tessa seemed to realize the weight of her actions. She looked between us, but Tori grabbed my arm. Let's go, Dad, she said. I can't stay here with her. Tessa gasped at the insult, but Tori was already dragging me up the steps into her car. She opened the door for me, practically shoving me in. I felt like I was moving in slow motion, blindsided by everything. Tori got in, started the car, and turned to me. Daddy, it's going to be okay, she said. You're reeling, but I'll make it my mission to help you through this and see you happy again. Now buckle up. It's the law. I buckled up, grateful for her support. Tori always drove fast, and with her R8 V10 Plus Spider, her college graduation gift, she added a little extra edge to her usual speed. Jesus, baby, I muttered as she sped down the road. You're going to eliminate me before I have a chance to recover. She laughed, unapologetically. It was only 10 miles to the apartment she shared with Talitha, but we made it in record time. Tori and Talitha were opposites in personality, though almost identical in looks. It amazed me how two kids raised the same way could be so different. Tori was full of energy, always talking and buzzing with excitement. Talitha, in contrast, was quiet and affectionate, except when she played softball. Then she was a powerhouse on the field. When we arrived at their apartment, Talitha squealed, slid onto the couch, and patted the spot next to her. Hey, Daddy, what's up? She asked, wrapping her arms around me. Tori settled in on my other side. Hi, sweetie, I said. It's been a rough day. Her big blue eyes looked up at me. What happened? You won't believe this. Tori jumped in. I went to grab Daddy's jack and found Mom at the house with a moving truck. She said she's leaving him. Talitha froze. What? You're kidding. I pulled her close. I wish I was, baby. What did you do? She asked. My heart sank. Why did both my girls assume I'd done something wrong? Dad didn't do anything, Tori said firmly. It's Mom. She met some guy named Charles and thinks she's in love. Seriously? Talitha asked, shocked. Tori played her the recording, and Talitha burst into tears. Tori and I held her between us, comforting her as she sobbed. Through my own tears, I heard her whisper, What are you going to do, Daddy? I don't know, I said honestly. She's leaving. I can't stop her, and I'm not sure I'd want to at this point. Talitha wiped her eyes. I need to hear it from her, she said. If she says the same thing, I'll be furious and heartbroken. I understand, sweetheart, I said. I'm still in shock, too. Tori, more pragmatic, said, Dad, you need to talk to a lawyer. Talitha frowned. Jesus, Tori, listen to yourself. This is Mom we're talking about. Do you really think she's not capable of worse, considering she's already done this? It's surreal, Talitha murmured. Like the Twilight Zone. It is, Tori agreed. But we have to deal with it. Talitha stood, determined. I'm going to talk to her. Meet me for dinner later. She grabbed her bag and left. Tori leaned into me, and I wrapped an arm around her. We sat in silence for a while before she broke it. Daddy, do you know any lawyers? I blinked, pulled from my thoughts. Yeah, but none for this kind of thing. Call someone you trust and ask for a referral, she urged. I couldn't believe it had come to this. Hours ago, life felt normal. Now I was considering a divorce lawyer. After brainstorming, Tori and I settled on Amanda Sloan, highly recommended by one of my contacts. I scheduled an appointment, received a checklist of documents to bring, and prepared for the next step in this unexpected nightmare. I needed to head home to pack for the next day's reception. Tori offered to drive me and decided to pack for herself and Talitha as well, announcing that they'd be staying with me indefinitely. I protested, but she was firm, and I knew better than to argue. While I focused on gathering financial documents, Tori took it upon herself to help organize our accounts and log into the bank system. Dad, you're not going to believe this, she said, her tone laced with disbelief. What is it? I asked, pausing to look at her. You've got $50 in checking, she replied, and $1,000 in a money market account. Is that just the minimum to avoid fees? Yes, but we should have much more than that, I replied, stunned. Mom must have drained it, she said. This isn't just cold, it's probably illegal. I'll move some funds around, I said. I got money in a credit union she can't touch. That evening, we met Talitha for dinner. She was visibly shaken. I had to hear it from her myself, she said, wiping away tears. I'm sorry I doubted you, but some things you need to hear firsthand. You're not mad at me, are you? I asked. No, Dad, I understand, she said. Tori hugged her. I wouldn't have believed it either if I wasn't there. Talitha shared what she learned. Mom wants us to meet Charles. She thinks we'll love him. I told her I wouldn't meet him. And honestly, I don't even want to see her. She lied to us. She cheated. Hearing that confirmed my worst fears. I guess we know the truth now, I said. I don't want anything to do with her either. But my emotions were in chaos. Grief, sadness, and above all, anger. The next day, Tori and Talitha drove me to meet Amanda Sloan, a no-nonsense lawyer who wasted no time. Within 2 days, she filed divorce papers, froze our finances, and demanded Tessa return any withdrawn funds. Neither of us could touch the accounts except for daily expenses. Soon after, Tessa called. Why are you being so difficult, Dax? She asked. Difficult, I echoed. You're the one who left. She insisted on talking in person. When she arrived and saw the girls, she asked, Why are you here? We live here, Talitha said bluntly. Tori added, We're not leaving Dad alone. Then they grabbed their bags and left without acknowledging her further. Tessa sat across from me and sighed. I don't want this to be harder than it has to be. I still love you, but I need to be with Charles. We can still be friends for the girls' sake. Friends? I said. I don't have friends who treat me like this, or enemies for that matter. Why did you freeze the accounts? She asked. You drained them, I replied. You have a job, Tessa. You earn good money. But you have accounts at the credit union, she said, which you've never contributed to, I reminded her. When we were together, it was ours. Now it's mine. Let the courts decide. By the way, wasn't Charles a roller skating enthusiast? She wrinkled her nose. His name is Charles. Stop being childish. I don't care what you think, I shot back. Is there anything else? The girls, she said. They're furious. You must have said something to them. Me? I asked incredulously. They don't need me to tell them anything. They can see for themselves what you've done. How long has this been going on? Why didn't you ever tell me you were unhappy? We could have tried to fix it. Tessa looked wistful. I wasn't unhappy, she said. Have you ever met someone and felt an instant connection? Like magnets? Yes, I replied. When I met you. She avoided my gaze. Can't we move on? We don't have to be angry. We've loved each other too long to let it go like this. We can still be friends. I don't want to be your friend, Tessa, I said. After the divorce, I doubt we'll have a reason to talk. The girls will bring us together. Graduations, weddings, their lives go on, she countered. Maybe, I said. I'll handle what I need to. I'm still the same person, she added. You used to like me. No, I didn't. Or if I did, I never really knew you. I'm done. You can leave, I said firmly. Tessa sighed and left. Needing space, I drove to the river, parked, and stood by the water to clear my head. After a while, a voice interrupted my thoughts. Hi, Daddy, Talitha said, walking up to me. Hi, doll. How'd you find me? The family tracker, she said, grinning. You insisted we keep it. I laughed, and she leaned into me. It's beautiful here, she said. What did Mom want? I sighed. She wanted to know why I froze the accounts and said we should be friends. She claims we'll need to stay connected for you and Tori. Talitha was quiet for a moment. Tori and I already talked. We won't invite her to anything. We miss her, but we can't go through this with her. You're sure? I asked. She nodded. Yeah, let's grab dinner. How about Mexican food? We called Tori, but she was busy, so it was just me and Talitha. Over time, things settled. The divorce was finalized after several meetings, and the girls stayed with me for 2 weeks. Eventually, I insisted they move back to their apartment. I love having you here, I told them. But you need to get back to your lives. I'll always be here for you. Okay, Daddy, Talitha said. We don't want you to feel lonely. Then call, visit, or invite me out. Do what you've always done." After hugs and sniffles, they agreed. They checked in often, and when the divorce was final, they stayed with me for another week. They didn't mention their mom, and I didn't ask. I poured myself into work, taking on more projects and classes to stay busy. I missed being married, the comfort of a partner, the small acts of care, but slowly I healed. It took a year to feel better, then 2. By then, Tori was finishing her PhD, and Talitha had paused her studies to work at a mortgage company. Both were thriving, and I was proud of them. Life moved forward, as it always does. Tessa occasionally disrupted our lives, like at Talitha's graduation, where she overheard plans to celebrate and insisted on joining us. "Mom, shouldn't you hurry back to Chucky Boy?" Tori asked. Her face darkened. "Charles and I broke up," she said. "Oh, really? When?" Talitha asked. "If you'd talked to me, you'd know. It's been 18 months, Tessa replied. "Well, we've been busy," Tori said dryly. I couldn't help but laugh, earning a glare from Tessa. We all drove separately to the barbecue restaurant. We managed to find her a seat, though the girls made it clear they didn't want her there. She left shortly after dinner, and I left for Tarawa the next day to work on a resort project as a consultant and shareholder. Tarawa was stunning. Pristine beaches and vibrant oceans. I spent time at clubs, met new people, danced, and even had a couple of flings. It was refreshing, and I returned ready to start living again. The idea of revisiting California and my old neighborhood crossed my mind. I decided to take the motor home, towing a Wrangler for local trips. After stocking up, I hit the road. Traveling was a blast. I stayed at campgrounds, attended events, and met many people, mostly couples, which made being single feel a bit lonely. It took 3 weeks to reach my destination due to frequent stops. Once there, I explored Ventura, Santa Barbara, and Ojai for a few days. One afternoon, I was at a coffee shop in Ojai when a commotion caught my attention. A woman, clearly a Karen, was causing trouble over a mask policy. Annoyed, I focused on the people waiting outside. One woman gave up, sat at a nearby table, and pulled out her phone. She looked oddly familiar. When she went inside, it hit me. Her walk sparked a memory. "Jacinta de Leon," I murmured. How could I forget? Jacinta had moved to my town in 3rd grade. She was magnetic, huge, dark brown eyes and a radiant smile. She quickly became my best friend. We walked home together every day, coordinated class schedules, and spent nearly all our time together. By junior high, I was completely in love with her. Unfortunately, my feelings weren't mutual. To her, I was just her best friend. I stayed silent, afraid of ruining what we had. I gritted my teeth through her string of boyfriends, enduring the heartache while cherishing the moments we spent together, like when she always saved a couple of dances for me at school events. One day, while playing cribbage in my room, Jacinta asked, "Dax, why don't you have a girlfriend?" I stammered, unable to admit the truth, that the girl I wanted didn't see me that way. "I'll help you," she declared cryptically. Soon, a parade of her beautiful friends started showing up, her idea of matchmaking. We remained close until she moved to Los Angeles and I to Texas. Years later, she reappeared, even more stunning than before. Now, an elegant woman with an air of independence. She wore a beige silk dress and black low-heeled shoes that highlighted her legs. Sitting in a coffee shop, flipping through her phone, she suddenly looked up, her eyes lighting up as she recognized me. "Dax, oh my God, is it really you?" she squealed, rushing over and nearly knocking me over in a hug, just like when we were kids. "It's been ages," she said excitedly. "What are you doing here? Are you alone? Is your family with you?" I carefully disentangled myself, wary of the hot coffee she held. "Take a seat before you scald me," I said, laughing. She sat down, pulling me into another hug. It felt like we were kids again, sitting side by side on the cafeteria bench. "Why are you here?" she asked. "How long are you staying?" "I'm touring the country in my van, revisiting the old neighborhood," I explained. "I've been here a few days with no real plans." She nodded. "I moved here 3 years ago, opened a real estate office, and business is booming. What are you doing tonight? We need to catch up." Her enthusiasm was contagious. "No plans," I said. "I decide what to do each day as it comes." "Wait," she said, suddenly serious. "Aren't you married? Where's your wife?" "I'm divorced," I admitted. "It's a long story." She brushed it off. "I don't have time for that. You're taking me to dinner tonight. I have a fashion show in 20 minutes. Give me your number." I handed it over, and she immediately texted me. "Wear a collared shirt," she teased, as she rushed off, leaving me grinning. Later, I remembered her love for turquoise and bought her a handmade silver bracelet and matching anklet from a jewelry shop. I dressed in black slacks and a pink button-down shirt, sprayed on cologne, and drove to the address she sent me. Her house left me speechless. It was a stunning historic property in Ojai, complete with gardens, wrought iron fencing, and a guest house. The grand stucco home was worth millions. I couldn't help but feel a little intimidated. I parked on the street, honked at the gate, and walked in. The property was stunning. Fountains, colorful flowers, a koi pond, and mature avocado trees everywhere. In front of the garage sat a green late 60s Jaguar E-Type. The place was breathtaking, a clear testament to Jacinta's success. When I rang the doorbell, the deep, resonant chime matched the house's elegance. Jacinta opened the door and I froze. She giggled at my expression. "Cat got your tongue?" she teased. "You know how you look, Jacinta. You're still the most beautiful woman I've ever seen," I said. She hugged me tightly. "God, I've missed you, Dax." "I brought you something," I said, handing her a gift. She opened it and squealed with delight, pulling out the turquoise jewelry. "You remembered," she said, beaming. We headed toward the gate, her hand in mine. "Are you sure you want to take the Jeep?" I asked. She laughed. "What, you think I'm too fancy for a Jeep? I'm still me, Dax." I chuckled. "You're just looking a little too glamorous for it. And judging by this place, you're doing really well." She grinned. "I've worked hard. Right now, I'm wrapping up a big real estate deal at Lake Casitas. Property here is insane." As we drove, she shared snippets of her journey, starting in West Covina, working for a big agency, then founding her own. "Enough about me. Tell me about you," she said. I handed her my iPad to scroll through pictures of my daughters. "Your girls are gorgeous," she said. "Is this your wife?" "Ex-wife," I clarified. "We divorced 3 years ago." "I'm sorry, is it still a sore subject?" I shrugged. "Not anymore." "What about you? I don't see a ring." She shook her head. "No marriage for me. I had a long relationship, but it ended 4 years ago. I don't like talking about it much." We chatted about our lives. I mentioned how close I was with my daughters and that they might join me later on my trip. Jacinta smiled warmly. "That's so sweet." "And you? Any kids?" I asked. "No, just me," she said. "I always thought I'd be a terrible mom. My mother was incredible, and I'd never measure up." Her honesty made her all the more endearing. We arrived at the restaurant, and Jacinta held my hand as we walked inside. Once the food arrived, she started talking, just like when we were kids. "The guy I was with was another real estate agent," she said. "We talked about him moving in, but things never worked out." Her expression turned serious. "That's the part I don't like to talk about." I squeezed her hand. "You don't have to, Jacinta." "No, I do," she insisted. "He was working with me on a big deal and cheated me. He bought land without doing his homework, and it backfired. Right in the middle of the property was 200 acres owned by the city. It was gifted with restrictions, no development for 50 years. "What happened?" I asked. She sighed, recalling the story. "He tried to get me to buy into it, claiming he could fix it. He couldn't. He resorted to shady deals and bribery, got caught, and ended up in jail. Luckily, I sensed something was off and I didn't get involved." "So you left?" I asked, leaning in. "Yeah," she said with a nod. "After Bob went to prison, I sold my agency and moved back home. Best decision of my life, and then I ran into you." "I was just as surprised to see you," I said, smiling. Her expression brightened. "Are you excited?" "Of course," I replied. "I didn't expect to find you here. I was just revisiting old places, planning to head to the coast." "How long are you staying?" she asked. "I've got nowhere to be until fall semester," I said. "Even then, my classes are online. My only real work commitment is in December." Her face lit up. "If I clear my schedule, can I join you for a walk? That is, if you don't have other plans." "I do," I said. Her face fell. "And they'll all be better with you." Her eyes sparkled. "Really? Then let's do everything on your list." Her enthusiasm made me laugh. "You haven't changed, Jacinta." She grinned mischievously. "Oh, I've changed. I'm smarter, and I keep finding hair in weird places," she whispered with a smirk. I burst out laughing, and soon we had the entire restaurant's attention with our antics. Spending time with Jacinta was pure joy. She was smart, funny, and full of life. As I walked her to the door, she chatted nonstop, making plans for our next outing. At the door, she hugged me tightly before leaving. The following 2 weeks were incredible, filled with laughter and excitement I hadn't felt in years. Jacinta was like a breath of fresh air, making life feel vibrant and new, much like when we were kids. It made me realize how stagnant things had been with Tessa, where routine had taken over. I started noticing the way Jacinta looked at me, her warm brown eyes with flecks of gold and green glowing in the sunlight. She hadn't mentioned my 2-week timeline, and neither had I. 3 weeks had passed, and I had no intention of leaving. We spent nearly every day together, always planning when we'd see each other next before parting ways. After nearly 2 months together, Jacinta invited me in after a day of antique shopping. We were snuggled on her couch sipping whiskey with an old kung fu show playing in the background. Suddenly, I noticed she had gone quiet. Turning to her, I saw her looking at me, her eyes soft and liquid. "Is something wrong, Peaches?" I asked. "No. Yes. Maybe," she replied hesitantly. I chuckled. "That clears things up." "Dax," she began, "why are you still here? Are you just spending time with an old friend, or is this something more?" I hesitated. "It started as friendship, but what do you think it is?" "It's more than friends for me," she admitted. "I loved you back then, and I think I still do. Why didn't you ever ask me out?" "You were my best friend," I said. "I was terrified it would ruin everything if you didn't feel the same." "I wanted you to," she whispered. "I tried so hard to get your attention, but was too scared to ask you myself." "You were the girl of my dreams," I admitted. "I just didn't know you felt the same." "Do you still dream about it?" she asked softly. "If you don't plan to stay," she continued, "you should go now. I can't fall for you again if you're going to leave." "I'm not leaving," I assured her. "I have responsibilities, my girls, and work, but I can stay." She smiled. "We'll figure it out, but right now, I want something else." She led me to the bedroom, and the night felt like stepping back into my 20s. In the weeks that followed, we spent nearly every moment together. Time slipped by, and suddenly, 4 months had passed. My daughters, Tori and Talitha, began questioning how long I planned to stay in California. I wanted to tell them about Jacinta in person, but plans changed when I got a text from Talitha. "Dad, I'm visiting for a week. Flying into LA Wednesday at 1 o'clock. Can you pick me up?" "Of course, doll, I can't wait," I replied. I told Jacinta. "Talitha is coming to stay for a week." "Uh-oh," she said, cuddling closer. "You need to tell them about us. I'm not hiding for a week. I want to meet them. They look like girls I'd love." "I want you to meet them too," I said. "I plan to talk to them in person, but now I'll suggest a Zoom call so everyone can get to know each other." "Perfect," she said. "When?" "I'll arrange it for Monday night. Do you have plans?" "Nope," she said, smiling. "Let's do it." I managed to get the girls on a Zoom call, though they were suspicious about my motives. After some casual chatting, I finally worked up the courage to speak. "I know I've been mysterious," I began. "I was going to talk to you in person, but I've met someone." Tori smirked. "Dad, we're not dumb. We figured it out." Talitha added, "Yeah, you're not slick." "Who is she?" I grinned. "Girls, I want you to meet her. Be nice, okay?" Jacinta walked in, sat on my lap, and I introduced her. "This is Jacinta de Leon. She was my best friend in high school, and we've reconnected. She's the reason I've been here so long." Tori and Talitha were initially stunned, but quickly warmed up. "God, Dad, she's gorgeous," Tori said. Talitha added, "We're the gatekeepers, Jacinta. You've got to impress us." Jacinta laughed. "I'd expect nothing less. I love your dad, and I hope to be a part of both his and your lives. I'm not here to take him away from you." Tori replied, "We just miss him being in California all the time." Jacinta assured them, "We'll figure it out. I want to meet you both and make this work." The conversation flowed easily, with the girls joking and sharing stories about me. When the call ended, I turned to Jacinta. "So, what do you think?" "They're amazing," she said, smiling. "Smart, funny, and definitely your daughters." When Talitha arrived, I picked her up at the airport. Seeing her took my breath away. My little girl had grown into a beautiful, confident woman. She hugged me tightly and chatted non-stop as we grabbed burgers at In-N-Out. By the time we got to the van, she was still full of energy, excited to see how it converted into a home. She was thrilled with the setup. Later, I told her we were going to Jacinta's for dinner. She lit up, quickly showered and changed, and then declared herself ready. I got cleaned up and we headed off to what I knew would be a memorable evening. Talitha kept commenting on the scenery and neighborhoods as we drove, and the closer we got to Yasina's house, the more impressed she seemed. When we reached the gate, I entered the code. As we pulled into the driveway, Talitha gave me a wide-eyed look. "Daddy, your girlfriend lives here? You've got way more game than I thought." I laughed. She's a big-time real estate developer. You'd never guess it from high school. She's Hispanic. Her parents came here from Honduras 5 years before she was born. Her dad worked in an almond orchard and eventually owned it, and her mom ran a small tamal farm. Back then, she did everything on her own. Wow, Talitha said, clearly amazed. We parked and headed inside. Jacinta was in the kitchen, and when she and Talitha saw each other, they froze for a second, then broke into big smiles and rushed to hug. What are you cooking? Talitha asked. It smells incredible, Jacinta smiled. Dinner's going to be spicy. Do you like spicy food? Hell yes, Talitha said. You can call me Tally if you want, Jacinta said. Tori and your dad do. Thanks, but I like Jacinta, Talitha replied. I can switch if you want. Jacinta laughed. I'm fine with Jacinta. Let's talk spice. Jacinta kissed me quickly before leading Talitha to the stove. She opened the oven, releasing a heavenly aroma. These are lamb ribs loaded with spices, she said. We'll shred the meat for tortillas with pico de gallo, brown rice, and refried beans. Dax, can you pick some avocados? There should be plenty on the trees. Oh my God, Talitha said. You just pick avocados? Jacinta chuckled. Yeah, we have lots of trees. I want to go, Talitha said. Need any help, Jacinta? No, just peeling and slicing the avocados later. You go with your dad while I set the table. I grabbed a basket and Talitha and I walked around picking ripe avocados. This place is amazing, she said. And Jacinta's even prettier in person. You're doing great, Dad. I laughed. Thanks, doll. I'm glad you like her. I love her, you know. Yeah, I can tell, she said. She loves you too. You can see it. Dinner was as delicious as it smelled. Sitting at Jacinta's large table with 2 stunning women was a treat. I offered to do the dishes, and when I finished, Jacinta and Talitha were on the couch with a laptop, whispering. They quickly closed it as I walked in, and Jacinta patted the seat between them. Uh-oh, I said. What are you two plotting? What? Talitha asked, feigning innocence. He's paranoid, Jacinta teased. Old people, right? I smirked. We're the same age. Yeah, but you're the paranoid one, Talitha said. Not true, I said, but I know you've been scheming against me since forever. All for your benefit, she replied. They finalized plans that didn't include me, and after playing a few games, we headed back to the van. Talitha kept glancing at me, her expression unreadable, until I couldn't ignore it anymore. What? I finally asked. I like her, Daddy, she said, a small smile forming. You're lucky. I know, right? I replied, chuckling. Don't let her get away, she added, her tone turning serious. Good thing I'm here to keep you in line. Ha! If anything, you being here might cause trouble, I teased. But I'm glad you're here. I knew you'd like her. She paused, her expression growing thoughtful. How do you think Mom will react? It's not her business, I said firmly. I'm not seeing her or asking her, so I don't care. Talitha tilted her head slightly. I see her sometimes, and so does Tori. What should I tell her if she asks about you? She asks about me? I asked, surprised. Yeah, Talitha admitted. She always does. I had no idea. Are you lying to her? She laughed. No, but I don't say much. Mostly that you're fine. If I have to, I'll just tell her you met someone. Do what feels right, I said with a nod. I trust you. You're smarter than me. Smarter? She giggled, flashing the smile that had melted my heart since she was a baby. We had a great week. Sometimes just me and Talitha, sometimes all 3 of us, and occasionally Talitha and Jacinta went off on their own. By the time Talitha returned to Austin, she and Jacinta were planning our next get-together. Tori flew in 3 weeks later, and her reaction to Jacinta was just as positive. We were on a roll. I stayed in California until consulting work called. After talking to Tori, Talitha, and Jacinta, we decided to take a working vacation. Jacinta and I flew to Tarawa, and the girls arrived the next evening. I worked during the day while they explored, and we spent the evenings in paradise. By the end, I had 3 tan women and 2 daughters who adored Jacinta. I had to head back to Austin to do some real work in my office, which was going to take about 2 weeks. Jacinta flew in the second weekend. The girls picked her up Friday morning, and she spent the day with them while I finished up. We met for dinner, and she stayed with me. Sunday night, we planned to take the girls for a walk, but their mother chose that day for one of her rare unannounced visits. She knew that giving notice would mean they'd suddenly become busy, so she always tried to surprise them. When Jacinta and I arrived, she was already at their apartment, making things awkward as hell. Tori introduced Jacinta as Daddy's girlfriend, and the shock on Tessa's face was unmistakable. The girls tried to usher her out, saying we had a date, but she wouldn't leave. "So, how did you meet Dax?" she asked Jacinta. Jacinta smiled. "I sat across from him in math class." Tessa looked confused. "You're both taking a class?" I laughed. "No, this was when we were 10 years old." "You've known each other since you were 10? Tessa asked, baffled. "Why haven't I heard of or met you before?" Jacinta explained. "We lost touch for a long time and only reconnected this year," Tori cut in before things got worse. "Mom, we'd love to chat, but we have plans." Tessa snorted unhappily, but Tori firmly guided her out. The look on her face could have curdled milk. When she was gone, Talitha turned to Jacinta apologetically. "I'm so sorry, that was awkward. She showed up 5 minutes before you and didn't want to leave." Jacinta laughed. "It's okay. It was bound to happen eventually. I have my place in your lives, and I'm here for you." Over dinner and later at home, the girls and I finally confronted the conversation we'd all been avoiding. Talitha, clearly nominated as the spokesperson, broke the silence. "Daddy, what are your immediate and long-term plans?" she asked, her tone direct. "Plans for what?" I replied, trying to deflect. She didn't waver. "I mean, do you plan to spend the rest of your life living in a van in California, or is there a bigger picture?" I laughed. "No, I don't plan to live in a van forever. Jacinta and I haven't discussed the long term yet." Tori chimed in. "Mind if we hang around while you two talk about it?" I looked at Jacinta. "I don't mind," she said. "I know how much your father means to you, and I know how much you mean to him. But you should also know that I love him, and I'm not letting him go." Tori nodded. "We know," Talitha added. "We don't like how far away you live. Dad, I've been talking to people at work, and Jacinta and I have discussed it too. I'm going to get my broker's license, and she and I are starting a real estate business here." I raised an eyebrow at Jacinta. "Really? You didn't mention this." She giggled. "Yes, Dax, I'm planning to leave my business in Ojai. Talitha and I see a huge market opportunity here, and we've been brainstorming." "I'm listening," I said. "I want us all together," she said. "My idea is this. I want you to live with me in Ojai for 6 months of the year. I'll hire an office manager and we'll spend 3 months here while Talitha runs the business. The other 3 months, I want us to live in Tarawa. I fell in love with the place, and as the resort owner, I can manage that." "That's a plan," I said. "But what about the interruptions? As expected, things didn't always go perfectly. Business in Austin often pulled us back from Ojai and vice versa. Despite the back and forth, we stuck to our Tarawa schedule, and Tori and Talitha frequently joined us there. One afternoon, about 3 months into our Austin stint, Talitha texted me with a photo. "Hey, Dad," the message read. "What's up?" I replied. "Just reviewing bridge inspection schedules. Can we grab lunch at 1? "Sure," I answered. "Does Ichiyumi sound good?" "Perfect," she responded. When I arrived at the restaurant, the hostess led me to a booth where Talitha was seated with another young woman. After the waitress took my drink order, Talitha turned to me with a smile. "Dad, this is Campbell Martin," she said. "My girlfriend." I was stunned, jaw practically on the floor. Campbell didn't take it well. "Screw this," she said. "Let me out of here. I don't need this." "Wait, Campbell, please," Talitha pleaded. "I didn't mean for this to go sideways." I snapped out of it. "Campbell, I'm sorry. My reaction wasn't about you. Talitha never told me she was gay. You surprised me, that's all." "It's my fault," Talitha admitted. "I should have prepared you." Campbell relaxed a bit. "She's my first girlfriend. I didn't think it needed explaining." I turned to Talitha. "Did you think I'd love you less? You've always had my heart. You know that." Her smile returned, and with it, the warmth that had defined our bond from the start. She started crying just as the food arrived, then jumped up and rushed to the restroom. Campbell turned to me, her eyes narrowed. "Damn, man, why'd you say that?" "Campbell, I don't know you," I said. "If you're Talitha's girlfriend, I'll get to know you. But you don't know me either, so stop feuding and swearing at me. It doesn't help. Honestly, though, don't you think being a lesbian is something you'd tell your parents?" She shook her head. "I wouldn't know. I don't have parents, but you don't get it either. It's not easy. Let me ask you, if you have a secret, love someone deeply, and don't want to disappoint them or hurt them, would you risk sharing it and getting hurt?" I sighed. I don't know. I don't know what I said or did to make Tally feel like she couldn't trust me. Maybe I wasn't as present as I should have been. Talitha came back with her makeup freshly applied, masking her tears. I grabbed her hand and pulled her close. "I love you with all my heart," I told her. You're my doll, and nothing will ever change that. Now go sit by your girlfriend. She sat next to Campbell, looking apologetic. I'm sorry, Daddy, I just... Shh, I interrupted. It's over. We won't talk about it again. Now, tell me how you met Campbell. She smiled. She was a pitcher on the Florida State team. We met at a tournament. Love at first sight? I asked. Campbell laughed. It was for me. But she had a boyfriend, so we stayed friends. And then? I asked. Until I moved here for a job, she said. What do you do? I asked. If you're okay with it, she replied. I don't mind, she said. I'm a software developer. She looked at Talitha, then back at me, rolling her eyes. He's testing me, huh? Will I pass? I laughed. You're a beautiful woman, Campbell. You don't need my approval, but I see what you're doing. Campbell raised an eyebrow. If I were your father, you'd fail the test. You're gorgeous, but you're too exposed. What the hell? Lucky you're not my father. Campbell, you're the one who asked him, Talitha said with a giggle. I like the way she looks, Daddy. I raised my hands in surrender. That's all that matters. Despite the rocky start, the conversation ended on a good note, and we parted amicably. The next evening, Tori stopped by and dropped a bombshell. Daddy, I hear you met Campbell, she said, giving me a knowing look. Tori, did you know about her? Did you know Talitha is bi? I asked, still processing. She sighed, clearly expecting the question. Yes, Daddy, I've always known. And before you get any ideas, if you ever keep a secret from me, I won't snitch on you either. Deal? Fair enough, I said. How well do you know Campbell? Pretty well, Tori replied. Tally told me a lot back in college, but I'll be honest, she wasn't always great. What do you mean? I asked, curious. She had a steady girlfriend once and cheated on her, Tori explained. Tally wasn't happy about it, so they stopped hanging out for a while. Wow, I didn't know that, I said, surprised. She's an adult now, Dad, Tori said with a shrug. Let her live her life. I get that, but if you were dating someone like that... A sudden thought struck me. Tori, she laughed. No, Dad, if I'm finding a life partner, it'll be a guy. After Tori left, Jacinta came home, and I decided to tell her about meeting Campbell. Her reaction caught me off guard. Oh no, I said, don't tell me you knew too. She hesitated before replying. Yes, Dax, Talitha told me she planned to talk to you. Why am I always the last to know important things about my daughter? I asked, frustrated. Jacinta laughed lightly. Because you're a man, Dax. Girls talk to women more easily. Well, I don't like it, I grumbled. Did you know Campbell cheated on an old girlfriend? Tori told me. And does that bother you? She asked. She was young, but yes, it does, I admitted. Jacinta frowned, her tone turning serious. Dax, they were 19 or 20. Didn't you make mistakes at that age? Yes, but not cheating, I replied firmly. The tension from the conversation lingered for a few days until I finally confronted Talitha. I'm worried about you, I told her, especially about Campbell. You know how awful it was when your mom cheated? Talitha's expression hardened. Yeah, I know. I'm the one who told you, remember? And now you think Campbell's the same? That pisses me off. She stormed out, ignoring my calls and texts afterward. Jacinta wasn't happy either. When she got home that evening, she demanded, What did you say to Talitha? Did she tell you? I asked. Yes, Jacinta replied sharply. She came to the office crying. Why did you say that? Because I'm worried about her, I said defensively. Jacinta's frustration was palpable. You're projecting, Dax. Campbell's a sweet girl who's grown up. Stop interfering. I just want to protect my daughter, I said quietly. Then let her live her life, she snapped. Your worry feels more like control. For the first time since we'd been together, my voice rose in anger. You're meddling, and she's not even your daughter. Jacinta looked at me like I'd slapped her. You're an idiot, she said quietly. How could you say that to me? She is my daughter. Ask her. I know you've been hurt, Dax, but taking it out on me or Talitha with a comment like that is just petty and mean. She turned and walked away, her back rigid with anger. Moments later, I heard her footsteps in the bedroom. I sat there fuming for another half hour before she came out, this time with suitcases. What are you doing? I asked. I'm going back to Ojai, she said. When you pull your head out of your A, call me. Her eyes brimmed with tears, her voice trembling. I'm not staying here with you like this. She walked out, leaving me stunned. How had it escalated to this? Why couldn't she understand my perspective? Why couldn't Talitha? I spent the rest of the day sulking and barely slept that night, haunted by the memory of Jacinta's wounded expression. The next morning, I stumbled through a mental fog, managing to pour myself nothing more than a bowl of cereal. At 10 a.m., the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, there stood Campbell, the last person I wanted to see. I sighed and stepped aside to let her in. Without hesitation, she strode past me into the hallway, exuding confidence. "We need to talk," she said firmly. "But first, I want coffee. Strong, black." I just stood there, momentarily dumbfounded by her boldness. "Dax," she pressed, crossing her arms. "Either you make me coffee or we're done talking. I'm furious with you, but I also understand you. So what's it going to be? Coffee, or are you throwing in the towel?" I couldn't help but laugh despite myself. Feisty, bold, and stunning in her ripped jeans and crop top, she was impossible to ignore. "All right," I said, heading to the kitchen. "Coffee it is, just don't kick my A, Campbell." She grinned. "I could, you know, I'm a damn good kickboxer." "Somehow I'm not surprised," I said. "I've got some Blue Mountain beans. Want to try them?" "Sure," she said, leaning casually against the counter. "By the way, I've always dreamed of owning my own coffee shop someday. Not one of those chains, though." As I ground the beans and set up the espresso machine, she sat at the bar, chatting about her vision for her shop. I handed her a cup of freshly brewed coffee, and she took a sip, nodding approvingly. "This is amazing," she said, setting the cup down and resting her face in her hands, her dark eyes locked onto mine. "Dax, you're crazy," I chuckled. "Probably, but what makes you say that this time?" "Talitha's devastated," she said. "And honestly, so am I. She doesn't understand you, but I do." I frowned. "You do? Enlighten me." "I understand," she said. "Your wife, Talitha's mom, cheated on you." "Talitha told you that?" I asked. "She did," Campbell said. "And she also told me how devastated both of you were." "So what are you getting at, Campbell?" I asked, leaning back slightly. "You see Talitha with me and you're afraid," she said, meeting my gaze directly. "Tori's probably told you about my past, about what I did. You think I'll cheat on her, don't you? You think I'll break her heart, just like your wife broke yours." I sighed, unable to deny the accusation. "And what do you plan to do about it?" "I'm going to show you who I really am," she said, her tone steady. "You're going to get to know me, and I'll let you see what it's like to be me." "Fair enough," I replied. "You're off to a good start." She smiled, her dazzling white teeth contrasting with her golden skin. "Dax, I know what I look like. I've been hit on by men and women alike since I was young." "Not surprising," I said. "You're beautiful, Campbell." "Thank you," she said softly, her expression briefly vulnerable. "Talitha probably hasn't told you much about women's college sports, has she? In softball, most players are lesbians. I'd say maybe 10 of my teammates weren't." I raised an eyebrow. "That's quite the minority." "It is," she agreed. "Now imagine being young and surrounded by that environment. I was a sophomore when I started dating another girl. We were together for a year. I didn't cheat on her, and as far as I know, she didn't cheat on me." "What happened?" I asked. She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I was invited to an elite skills camp run by two legendary players I idolized. It was a huge opportunity, so of course I went." "And then?" I prompted. "Well," she said, her voice tinged with both excitement and regret. "These legends weren't just interested in me as a player. They started taking me to fancy dinners, clubs, concerts, experiences I'd never had before. They pushed me to the edge." I frowned. "You're saying they crossed the line?" Campbell nodded. "That's where you'll have to use your imagination, Dax. These women were everything I'd ever admired, and they took advantage of that." I was silent, trying to process her story, the layers of complexity in her life that I hadn't considered. She seemed to sense my struggle and sipped her coffee, waiting for me to respond. Tears shimmered in her deep brown eyes before slipping down her cheeks. Watching her pain was breaking my heart, and I finally understood how hard it was for her to share this with me. She was doing it because she loved Talitha and knew how much my daughter meant to me. In her vulnerability, she was reaching out, needing me to trust her. I realized I had to stop this hurt. I was the one causing it. Grabbing some tissues from the counter, I walked around, handed them to her, and gently pulled her to her feet before wrapping her in a hug. At first, she was stiff and resistant, but I held her close and spoke softly. "Campbell, I'm so sorry. You don't need to say any more. I understand, okay? I know how hard this was for you, and I made it necessary. Please forgive me." Slowly, she melted into my arms, pressing against me as sobs shook her body. I whispered reassurances, promising that everything would be okay, that I would fix things, and apologizing for not giving her a chance. After a while, her tears subsided, and I carried her to the couch in the living room. She curled up beside me, and we spent hours talking. As dinner time approached, I cooked for her, and she helped by staying close, leaning into me as if we'd known each other forever. Despite the differences between her and my daughters, it felt like I had another daughter in the room. We drank 2 bottles of wine, and by the end of the night, she was a happy, giggling drunk. She stayed over, sleeping in Talitha's room, and the next morning she called Talitha and invited her over for breakfast. When Talitha walked in, Campbell and I were side by side at the stove, chatting easily as we made pancakes. Campbell had one arm draped around me, and Talitha marched right over, stepping between us. "What are you doing here, Campbell?" she asked. "What, like Dad, I came to enlighten your poor, clueless father," I said with a grin. Talitha shot me a sharp look. "Campbell, what did you say to him?" "Nothing bad, Tally," Campbell said with a smile. "I just came to fix things. He's an overprotective dad, and now I get it." Talitha turned to me. "Daddy, what did you say to Campbell?" "I'm sorry for how I acted," I said. "I understand why you love her and how much she loves you. Will you forgive me?" She threw her arms around me. "I love you, Daddy, and I always will. It's easy to forgive you, but I need to apologize too. I thought you were just being an idiot." Campbell and I exchanged amused glances. "I kinda was," I said. "And I kinda was too," she admitted. Campbell smirked. "We've all had our moments." "Campbell and Jacinta helped me see things clearly," I said. "I know you love me and care about me. I just wish I'd confided in you sooner." "I wish I'd done the same," Talitha replied. "And I wish I'd answered Jacinta's calls." "Well, you've got work to do," I said. "I said some terrible things to her." "I know," Talitha said. "She told me." "What did you say?" Campbell asked. She didn't tell me. "I said Talitha was my daughter, not hers." Campbell made a small clucking sound. "I don't think Tally agrees with you on that." Talitha nodded. "Technically, you're right, but emotionally, you're wrong. I'm closer to Jacinta than I ever was to Mom. I wish she was my mom. You need to apologize to her." "What?" I said, incredulous. Campbell grinned. "Hope you like crow, dude, because you're about to eat a whole homicide." We all laughed, finished breakfast, and had a wonderful morning. I knew I couldn't waste time. 2 days later, I flew to LA, rented a car, stopped by a flower shop, and bought every rose they had. Jacinta wasn't home, so I let myself in, filled her house with roses, and knelt in the hallway when she returned. She froze, startled, as I said, "I've pulled my head out of my A. I'm so sorry, Peach. Please forgive me." Tears spilled down her cheeks as she ran across the entryway and hugged me tightly. She pressed her cheek to the top of my head, her curls falling like a veil around me. "I hate being mad at you," she whispered. "I'm sorry too, Dax. I know you meant well, but I guess it felt like we were all ganging up on you. We need to communicate better, all of us." I gladly ate that crow. We flew back to Austin and went rafting in Colorado with all the girls. That was my family now, and I decided Campbell was part of it too, a fiery, wild jungle cat of a new daughter. 3 years later, they were all with us in Tarawa when I proposed to Jacinta. The girls helped with the plan, and as Jacinta and I finished dinner, I got down on one knee before dessert. Her hand flew to her mouth, and she burst into tears, catching me off guard, but I slipped the ring on her finger and she pulled me to my feet, throwing herself into my arms, still crying. Peach," I said. "I was hoping this would make you happy, not bring tears of despair." She giggled softly, snuggling into my shoulder. "I am happy. I cry when I'm really happy too." It was a small curveball, but I knew I'd knocked it out of the park. Our family was complete.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
The sun was shining, and the air was calm. Overall, it was a very pleasant day. So you might wonder why I was standing in a graveyard, pissing on a headstone. It's okay. It is my wife's headstone. My name is Tony DiLorenzo, and I'm a mob boss. I tried to trace the letters of her name, but my bladder ran out first. Gloria DiLorenzo is a long name, and I'm getting older. Lower capacity, you know. I looked at the stone. It was a double. It was designed for a husband and wife to rest in peace together for eternity, or at least until some builder wanted to put a development on this land. I knew I'd never join her there. To be exact, I will not lie next to a 304 under the husband banner. She chose the easy way out, ending her life with only her birth and death dates inscribed. You should have heard the complaints from the committee that oversaw this graveyard. They bitched and moaned about the inscriptions as not being fitting for their community. Well, I'm a really nasty a-hole and they didn't stand a chance. After my boys talked to a few members, all but one woman agreed to the inscription. Now that woman was a fat old bitch. She had a little money and thought she ruled the world. I had some friends break both her legs. While she was recovering in the hospital, her house burnt down, twice because the damn fire department reacted a little too quickly the first time. The second time the department was reacting to a false alarm across town when her house started again. This time they were only able to save the basement. Yep, I told you I was a a-hole. She moved out of state, permanently. Looking at the date, I realized that Gloria had been here about 6 years now. I examined my heart and found I still hated her. Well, she did piss me off. She died before I could make her suffer for breaking my heart. Okay, I've got a little free time, so I'll go back and tell you all about it. I grew up in a rough neighborhood. A neighborhood where you either joined a gang, or you got the shit beat out of you daily. I wasn't exactly stupid. I joined a gang. These gangs were ethnic. The one I joined was Italian just like I was. I graduated from high school and went to the local community college. Believe me, that was an accomplishment for my neighborhood. The local godfather invited me to join his society because I had finished college. It was an invitation one didn't turn down. My life in crime was set in cement from that point on. I met my late wife about 5 years later. I was running a successful new car dealership. Did you ever notice that mob-operated businesses were always successful? Some of them never seemed to do any business, but always had cash. The other businesses had no completion, figures. I had a new car dealership that only had competition from other mob-owned businesses. Like I said, no real competition. I met Gloria on a trip I took to Las Vegas. It was an auto dealer's convention, and I was going there just for fun. She was a cocktail waitress there. We both had things the other liked at first sight. I had lots of money and was spending like a drunken sailor. Well, actually, she had a lot more going for her, but I'm a guy and guess what I noticed first? The second thing I liked about her I saw when she turned around and walked away. Okay, so she had a great body too. She came up to our table and asked, "Can I take you order?" Of course, had a million pickup lines in my head. I opted for, yes. One of the other guys at the table ordered a bottle of Jack Daniels and 6 glasses. She counted 5 of us and asked, "Who's the 6th one for?" Expecting someone else? "You darling, of course." The a-hole replied. She gave him a big smile and giggled. "Can I have the rest of your orders, please?" And that's how the evening went. My buddy was scoring big time, and I was putting my foot in my mouth at every opportunity. She went off shift at midnight. The guys hit their rooms, and I went into the diner for a late-night snack. I picked one with a buffet and was standing there trying to make up my mind when I heard, "Why can't you make up your mind? You did fine in the lounge." I spun around to give whoever it was a piece of my mind when I looked into a million-watt smile. Our waitress from the lounge was standing next to me. She said, "The food's really good here. Let me help you choose. Oh, and by the way, my name's Gloria." We ate together and talked. Boy, did we talk. It was 4 a.m. when we left. She asked, "Can we meet for a snack tomorrow night?" And we did, every night for the next 4 nights. It would have been longer, but I had a flight out. 2 weeks later, I was back and we had continued our late-night snacks. At the end of the first week, we had breakfast in bed also before going back to sleep. We needed the rest. By the time I was there for a week, she agreed to home with me on a trial basis. Our trial basis lasted about 18 months before we married in a civil ceremony. We didn't want our daughter to be born out of wedlock. 3 years later, our son was born. I was complete. I had a beautiful wife and 2 great kids, and I was moving up in the crime organization. My car dealership was doing nicely, but my piece of the organization was really bringing in the bucks. Crime really does pay if you're smart enough not to get caught. I was very smart. The years went by. Both my kids were in high school and my wife was a stay-at-home mom, trying to spend all my money at the local malls. Things were going great until I went to lunch with some of my friends in the family. Now, I don't want to upset you. The lunch went off without a hitch. We talked business, in code, and had a great meal. The unpleasantness happened when I was getting in my car to go back to the dealership. There was a large manila envelope lying on my passenger seat. My name was on the outside. For some reason, I knew I shouldn't open it until I got back to my office. The paper shredder was there. It might be information about the organization that I would read once and destroy. When I opened the envelope in my office, I got the shock of my life. There were 8 by 10 photos of my wife having sex with other men. That's right, other men. They were not gangbang photos, but my lovely wife having one-on-one sex with 6 different men. Each photo appeared to be taken in different bedrooms, each with a different man. There was a typewritten report also in the envelope. The report stated that my wife was part of a group that met and changed partners 1 or 2 times a week. The report went on to say that none of the participants were married to any of the others in the group. The report listed names, address, spouses, number of children, motel room numbers, and dates the meetings took place. I had enough information for any good divorce lawyer to ply his trade. The only problem is that in my line of business, divorces cause loss of face. If man in my field of work, and I didn't mean the car dealership, couldn't control his wife, it was thought he was too weak to control his territory. The wives of most of my associates understood the score. When asked if they cheat, most replied, "Not on your life, my husband would kill me." And they meant exactly that. It appeared that my stupid wife didn't understand that. Well, I guess it's time to teach her a lesson. My first thought was just to have them all disappear, but then I realized that 12 individuals vanishing all at once just had to raise suspicion with the police. And when the cops figured out that one of the disappearances was my wife, the shit would hit the fan. So I couldn't take the easy way out. So, I started my planning. The first thing I needed to know was exactly what the extent of the problem was and spread the word that I knew it was happening and was in the process of retribution. I then let it be known why I just didn't whack them. Before Gloria screwed over me, I got along with the local cops and the county sheriffs. I tried to make sure that any of my enterprises did not cause them any extra work. They appreciated the thoughtfulness. If their personal vehicle broke down on the street, I'd send out a tow truck from my dealership to help if possible or tow them wherever they wanted. If the car broke down on their wife or girlfriend, my tow operators would bring them back to the dealership and let them use one of our loaners. If they asked, we would repair the car. The towing and the loaner were part of our service and not charged to the police officer. If their car needed repair, the labor was free and the parts were at my cost. I also offered installment payments if the repairs proved too costly for the officer. If the officer dropped his car off for routine service, oil changes, tire changes, and such, we washed and waxed the vehicle and detailed the interior. I think that little courtesy made us the most friends on the force. When it came time for a police officer to need a new personal vehicle, I gave them the vehicle at my cost whether it was new or used. I also carried the financing for them at 0 interest. If they brought in their patrol car, we cleaned that too. You'd be surprised how often drunks vomited in the back or scared kids lost bladder control when handcuffed and put in the back seat. One day I was challenged by a pesky newspaper reporter about these business practices and asked if it wasn't just a bribe. I replied, "These individuals work 24/7 protecting us from criminals. Most people take their efforts for granted. I don't. I can afford to help them when they need it. Someday you or I might need their help," I said. "I'd like to make sure that nothing was distracting them from helping us." The newspaper dropped the story. A few weeks later, the reporter's wife had a flat while taking their kids to school. It was a rainy, nasty day. One of my tow truck drivers stopped to offer assistance. With the wife and 2 kids squeezed into the front of his tow truck, he took off to get the kids to school on time. Then with the wife in the cab, he towed the car back to the dealership. While he was getting the flat fixed, a couple of the female employees took the wife under their wing, got her some dry clothes and hot coffee. When her car was ready, the flat was repaired, the car was washed and waxed, the interior was cleaned, and since the oil change was due, they changed that too. The total bill for all this work was $10. The cost normally charged for fixing a flat. A couple of days later, the reporter called me. "I'd like to say thanks to your guys for what they did for my wife. Can you have them meet with me in your lunchroom tomorrow?" The next day, my guys walked into a feast set up in their lunchroom. That's how I became friends with so many people. Over the next few months, I began to hear all about this little love group. The information came in about whom they were, where they were meeting, the times of their various sessions, and how it started. The guy who arranged it all was named Roger Stocks. About 1 year ago, he got to one of my wife's girlfriends, Judy. It was rumored he slipped her a drug or 2 and banged her for an entire weekend. Her husband thought she was visiting a sick aunt in another city. By the time the weekend was over, she was hooked on his larger than her husband's meat and some of the drugs. They then started meeting in a motel once a week. Roger was a predator. One woman was not enough for him. He soon had her getting some of her girlfriends to join them. Judy would do whatever he asked, just to keep getting him to screw her and supply her habit. They soon started having threesomes. Not Roger, Judy, and one of her girlfriends, but one of his male friends. She was their personal 304. The group soon consisted of 6 men and 6 women, my loving wife being one of the members. Roger soon got the women hooked on hard drugs. To support their habits, they became Roger's girls. He made sure that they all had customers for their charms. Roger kept them working a few afternoons a week, and their habits under his control. He made sure they only got high after servicing one of his friends. He made sure that they weren't stoned out of their minds when they went home, only a little high. This was a very delicate balancing act. I put all my notes together and formulated a plan. My first step was to get Roger infected. With my connections, it was easy to find a crack hooker who had AIDS. She was 18 years old and still had her looks. She was told that if she hooked up with Roger and made him think she was just an innocent little girl, her junk would be free. With that kind of an incentive, she was having sex with Roger 3 or 4 times a week. Roger, being Roger, attempted to get her hooked on coke. We had to regulate her doses from us so that she didn't overdose. As smart as I thought I was, I really didn't know if my crack hooker infected Roger or not. With my luck, the a-hole would not get the disease. So, I changed my tactics. It didn't take long to discover his drug supplier, and with that my plan was in force. We would substitute his regular bag with a special mix. I put out the word that I wanted a lab tech that could take blood and administer a shot, all without leaving much of a trace. I met with the tech and explained what I wanted. I would arrange for a sleep drug to be mixed with the narcotics they used. Once the drug mixture worked, I wanted the tech to draw enough blood out of the needle Mark Roger used to inject himself in and use the hole for the blood test for AIDS. I explained to the tech that we didn't need to test the girl. She was already infected with AIDS. The tech did her job perfectly. When she brought me the vials of blood, she commented, "If the test comes back negative, let me know. I can arrange to get some live virus and will infect him directly." The test came back positive. I had him. The next part was both easy and hard. The easy part was waiting a few months so that they could pass the bug amongst themselves. They used condoms with their customers. I guess they did want to take a chance on catching something, if only they knew. The hard part was also the waiting. I knew I couldn't have any contact with Gloria. I didn't want to catch the bug myself. I'd been to my doctor, and he had tested me for STDs. I was clean. I thought about the innocent spouses catching the bug. To be exact, I thought about it for about 10 seconds, and then I figured, screw me. They'd get what they deserved. For the next 2 months, I had headaches, stomach flu, a pulled back muscles, etc. Anything that would keep me away from her. My kids were both teenagers and had the minimum physical contact with her. I even hired a cook housekeeper. Not only did that keep Gloria from touching our stuff, but fit in with my long-term plans for getting even with Gloria. Finally, the night to extract my revenge on Roger arrived. He was in a cheap motel, screwing my wife's best girlfriend, Judy, the one that introduced Gloria to this lifestyle. Roger was on top, rapidly approaching his climax when the sliding glass door to the ground floor motel room exploded in. 2 masked men entered. They used a shotgun on Roger. He was blown off his bed mate when the blast hit him in the head. She wasn't that lucky. A couple of the pellets entered through her eye and started a hemorrhage in her brain. She died on the way to the hospital. That was too bad. I wanted Judy to suffer longer. The masked gunmen then tossed a bag of counterfeit $100 bills into the room and left a couple of narcotics bags on the dresser. The plan was to hope the police figured the shooting was a drug deal gone wrong. The killings made the news for the next 3 days. All the news organizations put it together that the murder victims paid for their drugs with counterfeit money. And the dealers found out and returned to the motel room to extract revenge. That was exactly what I had planned. I watched my wife going through withdrawal for the next week. She tried to keep us from noticing, claiming she caught the flu from me. I loved it. One night about a week later, the news announced that Roger's autopsy revealed he had AIDS. Gloria fainted. A few days later, I got the call. Gloria had gone to the free clinic to be tested. It was time to put phase 2 of my plan into effect. I watched my wife walking around the house for the next couple of weeks. I could tell that her world was coming down around her. I was enjoying the shit out of that. I played the loving husband. "Are you feeling okay? Is anything bothering you, honey?" And of course, the killer. "Would you like to make love tonight?" Rubbing it in felt really good. I wonder what I would have done if she said yes. Probably another backache, I guessed. On night after dinner, Gloria asked if we could talk. I knew what was coming, so I asked her if the talk could wait for the weekend when both kids would be out of the house. I wanted to make her squirm for a few more days. Saturday finally arrived. Gloria had the cook prepare one of my favorite meals. She even made sure I had a couple of glasses of wine to mellow me out. It didn't work. I was too keyed up with my surprise for her. Gloria took me into the family room and started her discussion by telling me how much she loved me and how great the last 20 years were. While she was talking, I opened the briefcase I had placed by my chair. The first thing I did was flip an 8x10 photo of Roger, screwing her on the floor of a cheap motel room in front of her. Her face went white and she said, "I can explain. It was only the one time, and he forced me. I flipped another picture of her and Roger. This time she was on all fours, and he was doing her. She just stared at the picture. I started flipping more and more of the 8x10s. She realized I must know everything. I then flipped some more photos at her. These were taken by the police at the scene of the double homicide. She looked at the bloody remains of her lover and her friend Judy and passed out. I got up and made myself a fresh drink. I dumped the contents of the ice bucket on her prostrate form. She awoke with a start and began crying. I grabbed her by the hair and slapped the shit out of her. No more lies and bullshit, I said. I don't want any explanations from you. You're a lying piece of shit. I then said, no divorce. I am too important for it to get out that I couldn't control my own wife. You will move all your things into the garage apartment now. You will no longer live in this house. If you think that you can escape me, don't even think about. I'll have you hunted down and killed, just like I did Roger and Judy, I admitted. Only for you it will be slowly, I pointed out, smiling all the time. She started looking very scared. I tossed the Living with AIDS booklet in front of her and said, this is how you will live your life from now on. In the apartment you will find orange biohazard plastic bags. You will place any item you touched and want to toss out in these bags. You will take these bags to the AIDS clinic when they are full and you are getting your treatments. If you screw up or give me any back talk, I will have one of your friends killed, slowly. I told her that both our kids were told what she did and what she caught. They elected to attend a boarding school instead of living here with you. I told her. They were afraid you might infect them. Your good life is over, I informed her. You screwed it up. From now on I'm going to make it hell. For the next year, I made her life a living hell. I sold her car, all her jewelry, all her fancy clothes, and anything she really liked. I even took her little dog to the vet and had it put down. I told her that I thought the dog was infected and didn't want anything around that might infect me. I even went so far as to kill a couple of her friends and tell her that they died because of some little thing she did. Well, actually I didn't do the deed, but some friends of mine did. The important part was that they died hard and my wife knew why. All remaining members of the sex circle were visited by the health department. Their spouses and bed mates were informed and tested. The divorce rate around here really went up that year. As a side note, one of the spouses tested positive for another STD. She caught the clap from her boyfriend, who she was cheating with behind her unfaithful husband's back. This little revelation created another flurry of divorces. One evening I drugged Gloria's meal. When she woke up the next afternoon, she had a tattoo across her stomach. It read, Biohazard, screw at your own risk. I guess I pushed her a little too hard. One day I came into her apartment and found her hanging from a ceiling fan. She had looped a cord from one of the blinds over the fan and then around her neck. The fan wasn't mounted high enough to break her neck when she kicked the chair away. She had strangled to death, a very hard way to go. The cops were curious about her living in the apartment until I told them it was her request. She had AIDS and didn't want to contaminate anyone. After the autopsy, the doctor confirmed that the AIDS in her system was regressing. The treatments she was on were working. It's ironic, isn't it? She killed herself to end her suffering. The suffering I was causing. The kids and I had a very private burial. The kids didn't miss her. They had moved on with their lives. I was the only one who felt any regret that she was dead. She had figured out a way to keep me from making her life any more miserable. Yeah, I know I'm an a-hole, but my actions have moved me up in the crime family. I am now number 2. My treatment of my wife's infidelity added to my reputation as being a tough guy. I still visit my wife's grave a couple of times a year, but I still haven't managed a permanent stain on her stone yet. Now let's check the story from Gloria's side. The pain in my neck was terrible. The thin rope just kept getting tighter and tighter. I tried to get my fingers between the rope and my neck, but I just couldn't quite make it. My heart was pounding, and my feet were kicking out, looking for something to stand on. It was becoming harder and harder to get a breath. I suddenly didn't want to die anymore. I tried to call out to God to save me, but nothing came out. The rope was too tight. Suddenly my life started to repeat before me. I could see all the previous years rolling by. I was born in the Midwest to a pair of party animals. At least that's what I thought until I got to high school. I realized then that they were just common, ordinary drunks. They got drunk every day and usually passed out in the living room. Our family income came from welfare. Most of it was because of me living with them. They were always kind to me. I was their meal ticket. I stayed with them until I graduated from high school. I was not smart enough to go to college, even if the money to pay the way had been there. I grabbed the last welfare check from my parents and took off west. I lost my cherry when I was 15. I really liked sex. I soon found that if I spread my legs, all the boys said. They loved me. I got the love I never got at home as a kid, and the boys got laid. It was a win-win for all involved. As I neared graduation, I woke up knowing the boys didn't really love me. They only wanted sex. My reputation and my parents' drunkenness made up my mind to leave town after graduation. I had no skills or any real training, so I spent the next 2 years waiting tables and learning how to charm men for bigger tips. I was cute. I had a great body and a pretty face. I learned how to smile and flirt. I guess I was lucky. While I wasn't a virgin by any means, I didn't really need to put out unless I wanted to. I finally landed in Las Vegas. This city was my kind of place. I managed to get a job as a cocktail waitress. I was underage, but I looked about 25. He knew I was underage, but I kept flirting and giving hints that he might get lucky if I got the job. I got the job, but he didn't get lucky. He was a fat, smelly slob. Since I was young and pretty, I was assigned to the 8 p.m. to midnight slot. This was the time frame where the waitresses really did well in tips. The only waitresses that earned more worked the high-end private rooms. They were making $1,000 or more in tips a night. I figured that they were servicing the guys, but later found out that absolutely nothing went on behind those closed doors. Actually, I found out that more guys were getting free feels off me than the girls in those private rooms. The rich guys in the private rooms were more interested in gambling than feeling up their waitress. My goal in life was to work in one of those rooms. More money and no roaming hands. There was an auto dealers convention in town. As any waitress will tell you, salesmen were a pain in the butt, literally. Their egos are so big, it's a wonder they can get a hat on. They hugged you, tried to kiss you, and grabbed your, well, you know. To make matters even worse, they were lousy tippers. The lounge manager warned us in advance about how they'd act. We were told, if you don't like it, I can replace you with someone who will like it. In other words, put up with it, or take a walk. I put up with it, and I had a few extra bruises and pinch marks to prove it. One night right after I started my shift, 5 guys sat in my section. The first thing they did was start rearranging the tables and chairs to their liking. Now that is one thing that pisses the wait staff off, because we have to put everything back when the clods leave. I looked them over. They were the typical salesmen. All of them were between 40 and 50 with big bellies and loud mouths, except one. He was around 30, dark-haired, and sort of Italian-looking. Actually, he was a cutie. I walked over to the table and gave all of them my best smile and in a flirty voice asked, "Would you gentlemen like to order drinks?" I was addressing the cute one. The cute one smiled a little embarrassed smile and started to answer when one of the other guys at the table ordered a bottle of Jack Daniels and 6 glasses. I had counted 5 of them, so I asked, "Who's the 6th one for?" "Expecting someone else?" "You darling, of course." The smartass replied. "It's going to be a long night," I thought. Actually, they turned out to be a fun bunch of guys. I was sorry when midnight came around and my shift ended. I was sorry because the young guy was a big tipper, not that they were a fun bunch. It turned the young guy was the owner of a dealership, and these guys were his best salesmen. It was his bonus to them for their hard work. He bought every round in cash from one of the largest rolls of $100 bills I had ever seen. And the best part was that he kept telling me to keep the change. It was the first time I ever made $1,000 plus in tips. The hotel was pretty nice to its wait staff. We were allowed to eat at any of the buffets after our shift was over as long as we remembered, paying customers first. So, I found myself waiting behind someone in line who was taking entirely too long making up his mind. I realized it was the cute guy from the lounge. "Why can't you make up your mind? You did fine in the lounge," I said. He turned around with a frown on his face as if to say something, but saw me and just lit up the line with his smile. "I'm Tony. Would you join me for a late-night snack?" I gave him one of my best smiles. "Only if you hurry up making your selection. My feet hurt and I want to sit down with you. The food's really good here. Let me help you choose. Oh, and by the way, my name's Gloria." We talked and talked until 4 a.m. I was so very tired, but never wanted the night to end. I asked, "Can we meet for a snack tomorrow night?" And we did, every night for the next 4 nights. It would have been longer, but he had a flight out. 2 weeks later, he was back and we continued our late-night snacks. By the end of the first week, we were having breakfast in bed also. We needed the rest. We were screwing our brains out. By the time we were together for 2 weeks, I agreed to go home with him on a trial basis. Our trial basis lasted about 18 months before we married in a civil ceremony. We didn't want our daughter to be born out of wedlock. 3 years later, our son was born. I had everything a woman could want: a loving husband, 2 great kids, a beautiful home, a new car every year, and more money that I could really spend. So why was I so bored after my kids were becoming young adults? I missed the excitement from when I worked those many years ago in Vegas. I just wandered around the malls and high-end shops looking for the same level of excitement I used to feel. One afternoon while I was out shopping at a local mall, I ran into my girlfriend Judy and her boyfriend Roger. I was surprised to see them in public because Judy was married and not to Roger. Wasn't she worried about being caught? I'd have to ask her when we are alone next time, I thought. The three of us had a very enjoyable afternoon at the mall. Roger proved to be very funny and enjoyable to be around. I could see why Judy likes him. While he didn't even closely compare to my husband, it was kind of exciting to be around him. I started running into them more and more by accident. We were soon stopping for a drink before going back to our respective houses. One afternoon, while Judy and I were having coffee at her house, I asked, "Aren't you worried that your husband Louis will find out about Roger?" She said, "No. Louis has a girlfriend at work named Sue. She's a divorcee with 2 kids. I've checked her out and she's about 30 pounds overweight with a lousy blonde dye job and a whinny voice. I don't know what Louis sees in her, but she satisfies his desires, and he leaves me alone. Roger, on the other hand, rings my chimes." Then she dropped the bomb. "I can share Roger with you anytime. He'd like that." I couldn't get the thought of Roger between my legs out of my mind. Every time I imagined him making love to me, I got wetter and wetter. Soon it was on my mind all the time. I knew I'd never cheat on Tony, but it was nice to dream about another man. About a month later, it came to a head. My husband took the kids camping for a long weekend. They all knew I hated camping. So years before, they agreed to leave me home instead of having to listen to me complain all weekend. After they left, Judy, Roger, and I went to a fancy restaurant for dinner and dancing on Saturday night. We ate, drank, and Roger danced with both of us. At some point in the evening, Judy took a pill and gave me one. She explained, "It will loosen you up and you'll have a lot more fun." I took the pill. Later, I woke up in a bedroom, completely naked with Roger in me. I was climaxing over and over again. I was in heaven. Judy was sitting in a chair watching us. It turned me on with her watching us. I peeked again. Later, I woke up and found Judy sitting nearby. We spent the time together, and I felt a sense of calm wash over me. When I turned my head, I noticed Roger kneeling beside me, quietly keeping me company. The three of us stayed in that room until Sunday afternoon, enjoying each other's presence. Judy drove me home in my car, and Roger followed behind. Once we arrived, Judy helped me get settled and comfortable. I slept deeply until Monday afternoon, after which I cleaned up and waited for my family to return that evening. I was glad that I had my tubes tied after the birth of my son. I could enjoy my illicit sex without the worry of pregnancy. Tony made love to me that night. I was like a wild woman because I was reliving my weekend with Roger and Judy. Tuesday morning, after Tony and the kids left the house, Judy showed up for coffee. We talked about what a turn on the weekend with Roger was. Somehow, Judy and I ended up in bed together. She taught me the pleasures of woman and woman sex. After she left, I realized that I now had 2 more people who loved me, Judy and Roger. The 3 of us started meeting at various motels 2 or 3 times a week. I was hooked on the sex with them. Judy still kept giving me one of those pills, and the pills just made everything better. On those days, I went wild on my husband that night. I guess the pill was still working on me. Tony never complained about the sex on those days. Soon Roger and Judy had me using coke to enhance the afternoons we spent together. It was a nice drug and I loved the feeling it added to our sex. One day, while Roger and I were spending time together, I suddenly felt a sharp pinch, almost like getting a shot. Right after, an overwhelming wave of euphoria washed over me. The feeling was so intense that I eventually lost consciousness. When I woke back up, Judy was playing with my body. "I knew you'd like the shot I gave you. Pretty good, wasn't it?" she asked. The shot became a regular part of our lovemaking. Whenever Judy injected me during sex, I always passed out for about 30 minutes afterwards. One afternoon, after an especially enjoyable session, I woke up feeling different. Roger was inside me, and Judy was on top of me. I was too lost in the moment to stop them, focused only on the pleasure I was experiencing. I spent the rest of the afternoon being their plaything. My relationship with my 2 friends progressed to the next level. I was becoming a doxy. All I wanted was the shot and great sex. Roger and Judy obliged with both. I don't really know when it started, but soon I was having sex with Roger's friends also. Roger or Judy would take me to a motel, have me strip, and then give me a shot. Men would soon start showing up, and I'd have sex with them. One week Roger had to go out of town. I experienced my first case of withdrawal. I was really hurting. I called Judy. She came right over with a shot. She told me the shots were narcotics. They had been giving me small doses, but I was still hooked. From now on, to keep getting my medicine I had to do what they told me. They set me up 2 or 3 times a week in a motel where I took on all comers. Every month or so Roger threw a party for us. Yes, us. It seems there were 6 of us women in his harem, and he'd get some of his guy friends to round out the group. Sometimes there were more guys than women, so we did 2 or 3 guys at a time. Sometimes there were not enough guys, and we women made love to each other. Judy would visit me at home on the weekend, when I was alone. She made sure I got my regular shot. I was in a mellow mood all the time. The shots just kept me a little high. One evening during the 6 o'clock news, it was reported that Roger and Judy were found dead in a local motel, apparently the result of a drug deal gone bad. Now where would I get my medicine from? I thought. I started into withdrawal. I ached. I vomited. I was freezing 1 minute and roasting the next, and my skin felt as if I had ants crawling all over it. I was a mess. I stayed in my room claiming I had a bad case of the flu. My husband was an angel. He asked if he could get me anything, fed me soup, and cleaned up my messes when I vomited. One evening after I started feeling better, I joined the family in the living room for the 6 o'clock news. The news anchor had an update to Roger and Judy's murder story. It seems that they were part of a sex ring and both had AIDS. I fainted. A couple of days later, I made an appointment at a free clinic for STD testing. Way too quickly they called my cell with the results. I had tested positive for AIDS. Now I really wanted my medicine to make my troubles fade away. I started making a plan on how to break the news to Tony. It took a couple of days, but I think I had created a believable lie. After dinner one evening, I asked Tony if we could talk after the kids went to bed. He suggested waiting until Saturday when the kids would be staying overnight with their friends. When Saturday rolled around, I had the new cook housekeeper make Tony's favorite meal. I even opened a nice bottle of wine to help mellow him out. After dinner, I sat Tony down in the family room and began my story. I told him how much I loved him and how great the last 20 years were. While I was talking, he opened the briefcase he had placed by his chair. The first thing he did was flip an 8x10 photo of Roger screwing me on the floor of a cheap motel room in front of me. My face went white and I said, "I can explain. It was only the one time, and he forced me." He flipped another picture of me and Roger. This time I was on all fours, and he was doing me. I just stared at the picture. He started flipping more and more of the 8x10s. I realized he must know everything. He then flipped some more photos at me. These were taken by the police at the scene of the double homicide. I looked at the bloody remains of my lover and my friend Judy and passed out. I was awakened by the cold water that was thrown on my face. Tony grabbed me by the hair and slapped the shit out of me. It was the first time he had ever hit me. I'll never forget the rest of the conversation. "No more lies and bullshit," he said. "I don't want any explanations from you. You're a lying piece of shit, Gloria." He then said, "No divorce. I am too important for it to get out that I couldn't control my own wife. You will move all your things into the garage apartment now. You will no longer live in this house. If you think that you can escape me, don't even think about. I'll have you hunted down and killed, just like I did Roger and Judy," he admitted. "Only for you it will be slowly," he pointed out, smiling all the time. What had I done? Where was my loving husband? I thought. I had always felt that somewhere deep down inside, Roger had a dark side. What did I do to bring it out? I puzzled. I guess I wasn't that bright. My life in hell stated. He forced me to move into the servant's apartment over the garage. He gave all my beautiful clothes and things to Goodwill. I was left with ugly shift-style dresses and plain cotton underwear. He even tossed my bras out because he said that having sagged tits was what I deserved. He made me put my food waste, used personal hygiene products in the orange biohazard bags. I had to take them with me when I went to the AIDS clinic for my treatments, to dispose of them. He even took away my new car and replaced it with an ancient Yugo. The heat didn't work and there was no AC. The a-hole even had it painted biohazard orange. Even my children deserted me. They enrolled in a boarding school just to keep away from me. This was my life for the next year. I guess the proverbial straw happened one morning when I woke up, feeling as if I had been drugged. I had a tattoo across my stomach. It read, "Biohazard, screw at your own risk." I started to formulate a plan to take my own life. It seemed like my life was over, and all I wanted was to be free from it. I was still trapped in that situation, and my throat was hurting intensely. I couldn't move my arms up anymore. The room was starting to go black. I really didn't want to die anymore. Someone might find me if I could just draw one more breath. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.